Purify me, Yah, in the flames. Purify me, see you let it rain. Purify me, Yah, in your name. Purify me, purify me.
Purify my heart, my home, my dome, my soul, bring peace. Purify this dirty water in my cup I drink. I only want the living water from the king. Only want the diamond pressing out of me. Only want the white garment that's clean. Only want the true facts, that's me. 24 carats I rock in my heart, but it sinks to the bottom, you know that it's pure. Coming in sharp like a dark and the aim is on point, so you know that I'm pure. Filter all the evil out of my life, so when I pour it's pure. You know that it's more. I didn't close them doors, so move your finger, boy.
Purify me, Yah, in the flames. Purify me, see you let it rain. Purify me, Yah, in your name. Purify me, purify me.
Trauma after trauma, trouble after trouble. Expected this way of life to be an eternal tussle. Thriller in Manila, told the Most High that I can endure. Increasing power with each blow. I'm telling them, give me more. It's gonna take more than just one. On that front line when it come. Boy, this spiritual warfare decided to come here, bring more than a gun. I've been purified, so down the ride as long as breath in my lungs. That consuming fire burnt my desires, never going back where I'm from. Gone.
Purify me, Yah, in the flames. Purify me, see you let it rain. Purify me, Yah, in your name. Purify me.
Yeah, man, I step out the fire, my foot on the devil, I'm talking to y'all like a FaceTime. Purify my spirit, y'all say my soul, I've been trying to stay pure on this baseline. Old folks with the old me, they don't know me, just look at my waistline. Fridges drop on the bottom, Hakuna Matata, ain't worried about none of them headlines. Fake news in the media, I'm never media unless we talk about touring. I'm just trying to go spread the bazaar, saying talking, I try to ignore. I'm looking for lost meanings in the scripture, I'm on an adventure like Dora. Y'all can write a designer, I write a designer, his image got me in the mortal.
Cause I'm keeping the faith. If you're not with it, then move on my way. It's purification, it's keeping me sane. I don't get offended cause I'm not the same. If you stuck in the past or you stuck in the maze, keeping it real, a minute behind is a minute too late. If the first shall be last and the last shall be first, but I endure to the end of who win in the race. Sin the perversion, I'm a face, shuffle your boots and tie your lace. Go through the fire, then conversate. Give me a time, dog, finna wait. You back in the hind, dog, on the lake. You read it all wrong, dog, connotate. You falling behind, dog, keep the pace. You heard it all wrong, dog, spin the tape.
Purify me, Yah, in the flames. Purify me, see you let it rain. Purify me, Yah, in your name. Purify me, purify me. Purify me, Yah, in the flames. Purify me, see you let it rain. Purify me, Yah, in your name. Purify me, purify me.
Send you the first, send you the first, we going out, out. Send you the first, send you the first, we going out, out.
Preset, if you scared, then go home. And no, we ain't saying it twice. Cause once you get into this war zone, it's either your life or their life. And we ain't about losing before an intrusion, we gotta make sure we right. So we send praise and seek his face. Then we load up it is on site. What you thought it was, it's not. Don't wanna see us on your block. Yelling hallelujah, trying to tell y'all that victory is your shot. We serve y'all Zah by O, and in this army of hosts, yeah, Yahoo the lead. True indeed, in his name we both gone.
Send you the first, send you the first, we going out, out. Send you the first, send you the first, we going out. Torch fire, flags in the street. Sing louder, kick up the beat. All them enemy feet get delete when we cry in the street. Drew to drop them me. Who got the praise for days? Who are the what came face? Made for praise, spit prophecy. We be that anointed royalty. I said we came. Hey. The bar Hamayim number 2, that's on replay. Yeah, we gon' bust them walls, mash up and be on our way. Yeah, to the nations we proclaim his Kodash name. Yahuwah, Yahuwah, Yah, Yah. Send you the first. Send you the first, we going out, out. Send you the first.
You said.
Send you the first, we going out, out.
From Symbion to Benjamin, we need every man out here standing. Got sisters home and they praying while they brothers in the field slaying.
Slaying demons in sorrow. Hamashiach, we do follow. Sword the truth, we loud no mute. We lenders out here, we know no borrow.
Jacob's seed is undefeated when y'all's greeted with praise and leads us through a war without a grievance till the win is completed. Then we return with our pieces.
Peace banger, peace be still with the Rangers. Mighty Morphin, we hang them up to drop, they can hang on, hang up.
Let's go.
Send you the first, we going. Send you the first. Send you the first, we going. Send you the first. Send you the first, we going out. Out.
Shalom and welcome to Zion Lexx TV. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, and share the live stream. Become a member of Zion Lexx TV and unlock several hidden features and hidden videos. Also, you can donate to Zion Lexx TV at Cash App $ZionLexx or via PayPal at zionlex@gmail.com. We also have an online academy entitled Learn Torah Hebrew Academy. Visit us on patreon.com/learntorah. Our Gold tier membership gives you unlimited access to our special event lectures and our special live movie nights. Our Platinum tier gives you unlimited access to our Torah class, Kabbalah class, Patriarchs and Matriarchs of the Covenant classes, as well as understanding the New Testament via the Oral Tradition class. Our Diamond tier gives you unlimited access to all of the previous tiers, as well as our most sought-after class, our Biblical Hebrew course. And finally, our highest tier, our Sapphire tier, gives you unlimited access to all previous tiers, as well as our highly esteemed rabbinical course. Be sure to sign up today and check your tier membership so as to ensure you're getting access to the classes you desire. Thank you for visiting us here at Zion Lexx TV, and now back to our current live stream.
All right, just like that, we live, we in effect, and we ready. I want to say peace to everyone, good evening to everyone, shalom to everyone out there. We have a very, very powerful conversation / podcast for you guys this afternoon. Our brothers hailing all the way from Hawaii, and I'm representing from New York City. This should be a powerful conversation. This is typically or technically part 2 to the conversation that we had just a couple of weeks ago, which was a critical and maybe even very, very important conversation of great and dire need. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I look forward to this. So once again, I'm greeted by and meted by the good brother Chuck Morgan. Peace to you, good brother.
Peace to you, brother. Nice to be here again.
Again. So let me just go ahead and straightforward, throw some things at you. Was there any feedback on your end with regard to anything that you presented?
I mean, you had people who asked a lot of questions, but it wasn't anything like a confrontational, conflicting type thing. No, everything was good. It was positive, actually.
Excellent.
It just opened the door for more questions. That's what it was.
And that's always a good thing. That's always a good thing. All right. So, behind the scenes, I did speak with you, and I had some questions that I wanted to ask before we got into the general topic. And so, straightforward, I want to ask you a little bit more about Dr. York and some of his views as it pertains to ancient Sumer and ancient Kemet. My awareness of Dr. York is similar to my awareness of the Israelite movement, which is, again, the year 1994. His pamphlets are circled around New York City. New York City is obviously one of the major hubs. I know that there are other hubs, but New York City at that time was a major hub. I get my hands on one of his books. A couple of his books at that time, they either was like big, like long, like workbook type looking books. If I could even see anything on my bookshelf that's remotely close to it, but you know what I'm talking about. They were really thin. They look like, school workbooks, or you could get the smaller one, like a pocket sized one that was like also still really thin, something like this, really thin.
They were called the Supreme Mathematics series.
There you go, the Supreme Mathematics series. And I do remember that they were numbered, they were titled, and they were always fascinating reads. Me being ultra geeky even at a young age, I'm never going to look back on the experience of reading his books and didn't say I wasn't intrigued. I think that when people do that, they're lying.
Same
right?
Here.
You could arrive at a place in full knowledge of him and what he taught, and then eventually realize that that's not what you're into. But to say that we weren't all intrigued to a certain extent, I don't know how honest that would be. So I would certainly have to go on record to say that I did find a lot of his books greatly intriguing. They offer different perspectives on things that I was already beginning to look at, and for those reasons, I was glued in. We would debate many of his followers. We would debate them on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We debate them on Flatbush Avenue. They had hubs that were also in Harlem. We debate them on 125th, and it was some great conversations. At that time, there's no brother Polite. So the year's 1994. Polite's a little younger than me. I think Polite's about 5 or 6 years younger than I am. So if I'm 15 in 1994, Polite is about 9 years old. So Polite is nowhere on the scene.
Yeah, he was nowhere around.
No, he was literally a little kid at that time. Much younger than I, and clearly even much younger than you. So I didn't run into him, but I did run into some very, very sharp brothers. And that's one thing I want to say, even before our conversation ensues here. Whether we realize at a certain point or junction that we agree or disagree with Dr. York and his body of work, Dr. York was very sharp in the things that he knew. His followers were also very sharp in the things that they knew. And if there's any skill set that I think that they were very, skilled and I want to say even trained in, was their ability to combat different religious factions. They had a response for the Hebrew Israelites. They had a response for the Muslims. They had responses for the Moors. And I mean, these brothers was, off the dome. And I used to be so intrigued by that because I'm a young person coming of age, learning myself, learning the world, and then learning about Afrocentric history, and particularly looking for Black men or Black women to gain a lot of this knowledge from, because of, how we have been misinformed by people other than us. And, so for those reasons, they automatically caught my attention. So having set all that up, having went into all of that, I now want to ask you what I think is, for me, the elephant in the room as it pertains to doctrine within the Dr. York school. I'm under the impression from reading his books, brother Chuck, that Dr. York believed and even taught that Sumer is an older civilization than Kemet. So that's the first question I have for you about Dr. York. Clarify for us, what was Dr. York's original stance as it pertains to Sumer being older than Kemet? And also take us through the journey and stage of how that thought develops and maybe even differs at a certain junction.
Oh, good. All right. For context, during that period around 1994, 95, York was, we were coming out of the whole Holy Tabernacle Ministries thing. Prior to that, of course, for people who may not know, it was known as Ansarullah, Nubian Islamic Hebrews. So around 1991, they moved upstate New York, dropped the Islamic part because of what Bilal Phillips wrote in his book, Ansar Cult in America, and some of the other political issues that were taking place at the time. Then he started to claim that we were initially Nubian Hebrews and that we would have our Shabbat at the Hebrew Israelite camps. No proof, no image, nothing. As time progressed, when we made the migration from upstate down to Georgia, at that time, he started to push the whole Zechariah Sitchin angle. Naki, Biru, the whole thing. All right. That time, he started personifying himself as being the grandson of Anu. The publications that were coming out at the time were centered around, if you will, Mesopotamian slants. I'm gonna put it that way. And as Kemet became more popular, he began to back off of it and abandon it. So in one publication, you'll find where he says that the Sumerians, who were Black, came before the ancient Egyptians. He never used the term Kemet because, unless he would make the point that Kemet comes from Ham, out of Hebrew, and Ham and all this stuff. But initially, when it came down to that, he started off saying that, yes, Sumer came or predated Egypt. And as time progressed, he switched it and said that Egypt came before Sumer. So he was inconsistent with it. And when you read the various publications, you'll see the contradictions. But at that time, he pushed the idea that, well, they're not contradictions. It's part of a school. We're all going through different schools.
Right.
The first school was Christianity, then Islam. And then he moved on to Hebrew Israelite or Israelism, what he referred to as Mosesism. And then he moved into this thing called Nuwapo, which is supposed to be sound, right reasoning, blah, blah, blah. So to make the long story short, he wasn't consistent with whether or not which group came first or not. And he never gave the documentation to verify. He would always say, don't believe me, check it out.
Check it out, right, right.
But he didn't give us, as students, the location to start other than what he said.
Right.
Because when you do check, certain things that he was saying is not found in the public in the inscriptions that he made reference to.
Right. I would say in that respect, he was probably ahead of his times in more ways than one. In other words, good brother Chuck, in the year 2026, as you're teaching, you can say today, hey, check it out, without actually telling people where to go, because we got Google, we got ChatGPT, we have YouTube. There are so many avenues to where that extend us in learning, that enhance us in learning. Today, you can do things like that. Real scholars still stray away from doing that just because of their training and their upbringing. But I think that would be more applicable today to say in teaching style, hey, look it up, check it out. But certainly in the 1980s and in the 1990s, you can't just tell people check it out and not have a viable source.
Especially with a topic such as that, because when it came down to just the top, when it came to Mesopotamian literature, you could it was brought when I got in contact with Michael Heiser, right? Because I was trying to collaborate with him with my website similar to his sitchingiswrong.com, and I was getting some pointers on how to open a website that was dedicated to the whole York thing. So because he didn't know anything about it, his whole recommendation was that I do it, and because I have more insight as being a member, former member, you can use this and this. And so his reference point, after I showed different teaching talking points York had when it came to Mesopotamian literature, his whole thing was, oh yeah, that's Sitchin, blah, blah, blah. So when he was suggested that I went to the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, and in doing so, I will be able to at least get a translation of all of the known Sumerian inscriptions that are in that particular database through Oxford. Of course, there are other databases that has an extended form of Sumerian literature, because we're talking about thousands of inscriptions, thousands, and they are compartmentalized in various websites, or not even websites, but museums that are running these various websites. Like Oxford University has one, and that'd be the electronic text corpus. Of course, the EPSD, going back to the Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania, the Chicago, what we call the COD, which is Chicago Assyrian Dictionary, and on and on and on. Literally anything you need to know about ancient Mesopotamia is documented.
Right.
You can find it. Now we can, but back then, no.
No, I agree. This leads me to ask you this as well. There's one thing for me to have you as a scholar on Dr. York's doctrine, as someone who was there and part of it. But it's another thing for me to take a step back and also ask you, what is your unique view? So a two-part question I have for you is, have you ever studied the topic of what is an older which is an older civilization, Sumer or Kemet? And the question I'd like you to ask first is, could you define for us what civilization is? I think in defining what civilization is, it helps us to gain a deeper understanding for what the answer is in history?
Well, you're talking about villages. You're talking about agriculture. You're talking about a government. You're talking about an economic system, laws, and the law on and on and on. What we generally know today as a civilization, if you will, we are going to go prior to what we know as being ancient Sumer.
Okay.
Because the what's the best way to say it? The current consensus is that the Sumerians, as we know them today, were a continuity of the previous Mesopotamian civilizations. They would be considered an outgrowth of Ubaid.
That's right.
Namzet Nasser, the people of Uruk. That was a continuous line. So when people want, because I've heard people in an indirect way kind of want to put Sumer versus Egypt, and what they'll say is it'll be a constant conflict. But as we see it today, and check it out. I wouldn't say it like that. But if people were to take the time and do the proper research on that, they're going to have to go back to not what the people who were later called Sumerians or saģ-gi-ga. We're talking about the people who came out of the Ubaid. So then technically, then you say, well, the Ubaid people, did the Ubaids predate Kemet?
Right.
Or if you even want to go a step further, say, was Ubaid civilization older than Naphtali?
Right. Right.
Yeah. That will be more concrete and more substantive, because at that point they had this running system of what we would consider a civilization, which may be older, and then as far as it is in Assyriology today, that would be older. The Ubaid and Jamnet Nasser, and then Sumer comes out of that, and that will be the dynasty. That will be early dynastic A, and then B on into the what we call the Renaissance period, and then the decline.
All right,
So
all right.
Yeah, so that's basically it. As far as from my study,
Right.
in looking at both sides of the argument, you had the Ubaid population, but here's the thing. Here's the thing: we wouldn't even know about the Sumerians had it not been for the writing system.
Come on,
because
that's
that
right.
writing system solidified their position in existence. That put them into the brick of civilization. Prior to that, you wouldn't have known anything about them, because the Ubaid didn't write about themselves.
That's right.
They didn't have a writing system.
That's right.
So go ahead.
No, my apologies. I don't want to cut you. I am gonna ask something, but I want to wait. Okay, so
talk to him.
so because we're now talking about Ubaid being an older civilization, I'm gonna reach in and push back just a bit to kind of represent some of academia, right? So academia would say that Ubaid is not yet a civilization; they're only a culture, because of the fact that they don't have writing, right? In academia, when you have a civilization, one of the hallmarks from an academic standpoint of what we're calling civilization is writing. And why writing is important is because until we see how the people define their culture, their lifestyle, their way of living, which comes to us from their writing, we don't really have a way to get the story entirely accurate, at least as it pertains to their eye view. So scholars that came up with what are essentially the hallmarks of civilization would regard writing as a very important piece of that. And because Ubaid as a culture does not yet have writing, seemingly, I'm going to say that seemingly.
I'm glad you said that.
Because we're on the same page. So I'm saying seemingly that's the reason why they wouldn't refer to them as a civilization. So what's your thoughts on that point?
Well, for one, all the other dynamics seems to fit the category. Now, they may not have had the writing system that we see today.
Yes.
What they had was a pictorial form of communicating.
Okay.
And that picture, now, depending on who the individual may be, they would say that, well, hieroglyphics, although it's pictorial, it is a form of writing in some sense. Well, if that be the case, then the Ubaids, on the same token, would fit that category as well.
That's right. That's right. By that measure, the people of Ubaid, the Ubaid culture would fit that hallmark as well.
And that's key, because the argument isn't necessarily just who was older. It just happens to be that one group developed one way and another group another way, which is similar at a near similar time.
That's right.
When you look at the time factor, they say that they both developed independently around that same period. And that's understandable, because we start to see the evidence that supports it. What the Sumerians are accredited for, or to give the credit to them, was to take that pictorial form and innovate and then revolutionize and start using instead of having it used to designate pottery or levels of government in terms of what's the word they use for that? I can't think of it right now. But whenever you're dealing with say livestock,
trade,
and
commerce,
trade and commerce, so you had this pictorial form of writing that was used for those purposes, and then it evolved.
Accounting.
Yeah, it evolved more under the Sumerians,
right?
At least in the early period, what they call early Sumerian inscription, and then it became more developed.
Right.
And then more grammar started becoming a part of it, and that goes further down towards the third dynasty of ancient Sumer.
No, these are some critical points. Let me ask you really quick too, before we move. When you're talking about Sumer as an established civilization, I think timelines are important. So from your study, when is Sumer a civilization first, by those standards, by those hallmarks, right? For instance, Kemet is considered a civilization by 3100 BC. Scholars are trying to push it back to 2900 BC. Obviously, African American scholars have a huge issue with it, because they see that as a running rivalry between Sumer and Kemet, obviously, with the intention that they believe scholars are doing this because they're trying to make Sumer older than Egypt. And I'm not sure that that's the reason why scholars are doing it, if I could be honest with you, Chuck Morgan. I think as more information becomes available, scholars do update information. I think that's what's happening.
And that's what I was saying to someone on another show, that it's like science. We can hold firm to an established understanding based on the evidence that we have currently. 5 years from now, we may have to abandon what we currently hold and move to the new understanding based on the evidence that we've been able to uncover.
That's right.
That's right. And so the timeline, with both, they develop around the same time period. Not just Sumerians and Egyptians. You got to go all the way Indus Valley civilization does the same thing.
That's right.
If you look at the timeline of civilizations of the world, they all seem to pan out around the same period.
That's right.
Slightly, maybe a few weeks, months, but they still develop in that general time period.
Right. And also, if we might add, in that general region There's a lot that's happening in that region that scholars are calling the Fertile Crescent, right? Which I'm going to extend that to Egypt as well. Egypt is part of the Fertile Crescent, from a scholarly perspective. And all of these civilizations are also considered hydraulic civilizations. They're river valley civilizations, which allows for the information to transcend regions, right? Due to the fact that they are river valley civilizations, right? That they're through trade, through commerce, through networking, they're able to take ideas that may in fact may build from one particular region, but they're obviously trading it. When you go in early Egypt, right, or Dynasty 0, right, the time before Egypt is an actual kingship. So now we're talking about using Egyptian language. They refer to the era before the pharaohs as the Zep-Tepi period. So in the Zep-Tepi period, you find Sumerian archives all over Egypt. But I can be honest enough to say, even in Sumer, you do find ancient Egyptian regalia. The only thing that I would say is that you don't see it early on in Sumerian civilization, right?
Say that last part again.
I said the only contrast for me would be, even though in Egypt's earliest origins, even what they call the Zep-Tepi period, which is the time before the pharaohs, you can see evidence of Sumerian influence. You can see evidence of Sumerian interaction. However, although you can see in Sumer evidence of Egyptian interaction and even Egyptian influence, if I'm brutally honest, you don't see that in the origin stage of Sumerian civilization. That's my point.
Okay, that's where I was trying to get some clarity. Okay, so in ancient Egypt, there are motifs that are directly related to Sumer.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, that's what. Okay, show me. I mean, show me, like literally show me. I'm saying.
So yeah, I'll give you some examples. Okay. So in ancient Egypt, you literally have cuneiform wedges that are actually representing communication in Kemet, which to me is interesting because if Kemet's writing system is Medo-Neter, the hieroglyphs, then why am I finding in the Zep-Tepi period cuneiform, right? So I do museum tours, Brother Chuck. When you go into Egypt and you go into what's called the Old Kingdom part of the Egyptian exhibit in the Met Museum here in New York City, the Old Kingdom, they date at 2800 to 2600 BC, right? That's the date by the Met Museum standard. Of course, I wouldn't entirely agree with it, but that's the date that they hold. When you go there, the first thing you see on the outside, Brother Reggie does tours there too. In fact, Brother Reggie has done a tour with me simultaneously there, so he can verify what I'm saying. There are glass windows on the outside of the Egyptian exhibit as you get into the Old Kingdom period part of it. And in those glass mirrors, they're describing what are the very first recorded signs of writing in Egypt. And it's not Medo-Neter. It's literally cuneiform. So for me, I always found that interesting, right? I found it interesting that the museum shows you that the earliest signs of writing in ancient Kemet literally are inscriptions that are in cuneiform. Like you literally see excuse me, hold on one moment.
Yeah, because I'm kind of curious about that.
I have some here.
All right.
My apologies, Chuck. I have some.
No, take your time. We can take it out.
I just gotta find it, but all right. So you would be familiar with similar wedge clays patterns like this, right? Right, containing cuneiform. Obviously, you can't decipher the cuneiform.
I can't see that.
It's too small, right? But
yeah.
Wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared to go in this direction.
we can do that one.
I don't have everything before me, but I do have a lot of souvenirs that I use in my museum tours, Chuck. One of them is like a cuneiform stylus. You can also see it's been a long time even talking about this, that the language even escapes me. In order to get the impression on the actual clay, you have to roll it against, what's the term called?
Oh, you're talking about a cylinder seal.
Cylinder seals, right. So that's my point. The first thing you encounter in ancient Egypt in those windows, you see the cylinder seals and you see the cuneiform wedge tablets, and you literally are looking at cuneiform inscriptions. So I always question, why is that? If ancient Egypt's language, I mean, they're in terms of their writing system, is Medu Neter, then why is this the earliest recorded symbols, which don't belong to Egypt? It belongs to Mesopotamia. What's your thoughts on that?
I've seen a few of those before, and from just some of the searches that I've done on it, and just a little background check on it. From what I've been understand it to be indirect contact,
right?
Traders, caravans, and not specifically one civilization interacting directly with the other.
Yes.
And certain cylinder seals. What's important is to find out what period that inscription is linked back to.
Right.
Because that also is important.
So the dates in the museum range from 3100. I actually could pull it up live. I'm going to do that as you're talking. But the dates range from 3100 to 2900 BC for those cylinder seals.
Yep. Let me take a look at that. I would like to take a little further, deeper look into that, depending on what it is.
And I don't want to take away from the general topic, but I mean, being that I have you here, good brother Chuck, I thought it would be incredible to kind of
It'll be good because even if you don't do it here, I would ask you for it, because I would like to do some background on that myself, and then if we do a part 3, we can come back and jump right into that one specifically.
Yes, let me see if I can pull this out quick. If I can, I can't, but I'm going to type in the one that's in the Egyptian exhibit. I'm going to go to my share screen really quick. All right, Chuck?
Okay.
All right. All right. I typed in literally Met Museum, Egyptian cylinder seals in the Egyptian exhibit. Right. I had to type in Egyptian cylinder seals because they also have cylinder seals from Sumer, from the Assyrian era, as well as the Akkadian era. So I'm just going to go now to the ones that I recognize in the museum as when you go in the first corridor, you see them in Egypt. So here is one right here. So cylinder seal, Egyptian, Old Kingdom. This is what I was talking about. I'm going to click on it now. The date here says 2200, but I know that they have some that were saying 2900. So maybe, okay, so the one that I pulled up, Chuck, says 2200, but it's also not the one that's in the image. If you look at the image on the screen, which I'm going to try to find really quick, the image on the screen, there we go. Let me try to push it a little bit. All right, for some reason, I'm clicking it and it's not going there. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to make this big, and then we're going to go here. All right, I'm going to go to my new share screen, and I'm just going to ask you to weigh in on this for us. It doesn't seem to me like writing. It looks more pictographic. I would like you to tell us what this is. So this is from the Old Kingdom period. It's dated in the museum as being between 3100 and 2900 BC. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, it's difficult to, well, obviously, clearly it's not a rating, but it's conveying some type of message through the illustration. But the base is clear that it is a cylinder. It is a standard roll impression.
Right.
Yeah,
And where would you say the origin of that type of writing style is? Do you see that as something produced in Egypt by Egyptians, or would you say that cylinder seals is from Mesopotamia?
Well, I mean, Egypt had a brief usage of cylinder seals, but that was
Yes.
rare and it was transitional.
Yes.
It was fundamentally Mesopotamian, and Egypt eventually just abandoned it in favor of stamps and scarab seals, which we don't see that in Sumer, but
Right.
you can see the progression and how it moved forward from there.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. So, those are some of the things that really, really interested me. And I'm a person, good brother Chuck, that I like to study symbols. So one day when I was in a museum with Brother Reggie, I asked Brother Reggie if he could tell me what this symbol that I'm going to show you is. After I show this symbol, I'm done on this topic. And I just want to get into the Kish Kush thing. And then from there, we can advance. I'm also aware of your time, so I'm not going to, keep you too long. Okay, good. So I have this one more thing I'm going to show you from the museum, and it's this image. It should be on the screen now. Let me just double check. Yes, it is. I want you to look at something, Brother Chuck. All right, as I blow it up a little bit more. All right. What does this image that I'm pointing to here look like to you?
Well, it is obviously it's a throne. There's some form of authority. If in my estimate, if I look at it, this looks more Akkadian.
Right. And I agree. I agree with that, by the way. Right. And when we're talking about the Akkadians, the beginning of the Akkadian Empire / civilization, scholars are dating about 2300 BC. Right. So I'm familiar with that. But the question I have for you is, below the figure seated on the throne, you see a lion-like figure crouching on the left, another one crouching on the right. But if you stay at the one on the left, Chuck, and you also look, you can see that I literally have something hovering on the screen. Do you see that I have something moving on the screen? Can you see that?
What looks like an ankh.
I was going to ask you about that. So that's my question for you.
Yeah.
What? And I want to try to make sure I ask you the question accurately so that we can get somewhere with this. Does the ankh have any relevance indigenous in Mesopotamian culture? In other words, if a person sees the ankh in Mesopotamia and they're not familiar with history and they just know that that's an Egyptian symbol, then the thinking is this is Egyptian influence. This is something imported from Egypt. It has nothing to do with any culture indigenous to Mesopotamia. This is a borrowing. So for me now, I have to ask you, what would be your thoughts if this is actually capturing the Akkadian civilization? What's your thoughts on the idea of the ankh here? And in general, what relevance does this image symbol have in Mesopotamian indigenous culture, if any at all?
Well, it depends. It depends on the time period, and from what it looks like, from what I can make it out, it's definitely not Sumerian.
Right.
It's more a Syro-Babylonian type.
Right.
And by that time, there was some communication between the two groups, because we can see what do you call them, the like with the wing disc.
Yes.
You have I'm trying to remember that, I forget the it looks like a bull, a man's head, bull body. I forget what it's called. We find these motifs all over Neo-Assyrian depictions of different cosmic views. If you look at the person sitting, what he's wearing, that's clearly a Akkadian.
Right.
That's one of the most. That's the first thing that I know. That and the star or sun disk.
Right. But here would be the interesting thing about some of what you're mentioning, good brother Chuck. So there's no representation of the ankh in Egypt, before what is called the let me make sure I get my language correct. So Egypt's pyramid text is dated to the same period as when the Akkadians come on the world scene, so which is 2300 BC. So the date of the pyramid text, right, so-called in ancient Egypt, that dates to 2300 BC. This is also the time that Akkad is beginning to become a civilization, 2300 BC, with Sargon I. So my question to you now, in light of what you're saying, the Akkadian headdress, I mean, even if this is
not the headdress. I was looking
not the headdress. I mean the outfit. My apologies. Yeah. I did mean the outfit. I said headdress.
That's cool.
But I did mean the outfit. But even if this is Akkad, that means the era would still be circa 2300 at its oldest, right? I'm going to use the oldest in this moment, which would still mean we don't yet have representation of the ankh yet. We have a lot of symbols in Egypt by this time, but in 2300 BC, you're not seeing the ankh yet.
Mm-hmm. I would have to go and dig a little deeper to see exactly if this is in fact an ankh or just something that resembles it.
Right. I agree. But again, because you're the scholar on Akkad, I want to say Sumer, Assyria, Mesopotamia. I have to ask you.
Akkadian is just you have to have some understanding of it, but I'm not as versed in it as say I would be in ancient Sumer.
So Sumer is the greater of your skill set between Sumer and Akkad?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting, and when we look at this, I'm looking at some of the images, and like with the griffin, all of this is more of a later period. This is not in, say, would be the earlier period of Akkad or Babylon.
Yes.
This is like this looks more like Babylonian, during that transitional period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it? Because this is good because I want to be able to go there and check this out and do my own little research on it.
Well, you know what, I think you did capture it, because I'm clicking on the actual item in the museum, and it says cylinder seal and modern impression, royal worshiper before a god on the throne, human-headed bulls, circa 1820 to 1730 BCE, which is certainly the Babylonian era.
Okay.
Certainly.
Well, that was right.
Right. So you were absolutely right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But yeah. so now we're clear on the era.
Okay.
Right. So in being clear on the era, I still have the question for you. As far as you know, and let me just take that off the screen. As far as you know, does the ankh have any relevance in Mesopotamian indigenous culture at any time in their history?
What I have studied, no, I haven't seen anything like that.
Okay.
I don't even see it even used once in Sumerian imagery.
Okay. All right. Again, because you're here, for me,
Man, come on,
as you know, I love the topic of Sumer, Akkad, Mesopotamia. I have a lot of thoughts on it. Many of them controversial, I'm going to admit that, and many of them also unique. But because I have you here, I want to make sure that I can ask you some of these pressing questions that either I have researched, I am still questioning, and I'm curious still about, and I've certainly wanted to make sure I get that out the way.
And I'm sharing what I've been able to dig up myself.
Right.
And like I said, I'm always open to change, or if I'm wrong, by all means.
Right.
I'm just saying, here's what I've been able to uncover in scholarly circles, Assyriologists, publications, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So yeah, let's go to my chair is not sitting right. So I'm sitting down. Yeah. Let me make an adjustment real quick. But I'm right here with you.
Take your time. So the next thing I want to go into is a conversation you and I had on Sonata's platform. I want to say maybe 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
The conversation dated back to me making a statement on his platform comparing the toponym Kish with the people group Kush. And you pointed out on a show that was problematic. I believe it was Garfield's platform. And then, as irony would have it, I later on go on Sonata. I'm having a conversation with Jabari and some others, and you came in live. You know, we actually saw you. You was live on with us, and you had a question for me when you joined on, and your question was exactly this point. And you said, you know, Brother Zion Lexx, I have a question for you, and my question is, you know, why is it? And I'm just paraphrasing. So if I'm not saying the question correctly or anything you said correctly, just, you know, stop me. But in my attempt to paraphrase what you said, Zion Lexx, I'm not sure why you're conflating the toponym Kish with the people group Kush, because in my scholarship, in my study, there's no relationship there. There's no linguistic relationship, and there's no people group relationship. So could you clarify that point? And then I went into answering that. So I want to just jump into that a little bit more with you and have you maybe, even if you'd like, demonstrate it live for us. That way we can have some clarity. So I'll open with this question for you. When people hear a name that is similar to another name in terms of history, most people assume one and the same, that what we're hearing is the same. So you say tomato, I say tomato, we're both talking about a tomato. You say Kish, I say Kush, we must be talking about the same biblical people group. What's problematic, Brother Chuck, before we delve into the language aspect? What's problematic of making those kind of conclusions, hearing Kish, which is a toponym in Sumer, right, to describe the oldest city from whence the kingship was given to after the flood based on their narrative? What's problematic with that people do, even I do, hearing Kish, hearing Kush, and saying from hearing alone that there must be some relatability there? Speak to us about that.
Oh, well, it's real simple. In Sumerian, they have a word, Kush, which is different from Kish. So the argument becomes more difficult to hold down, because we can go into the various inscriptions and look at this word Kush and the context. And then we can then look at Kish and all things associated with it, and we'll find that they being the same would not match up. Because one thing in the minor studies I have with historical comparative linguistics is that when you're looking at words that may resemble each other, these are what they refer to as chance similarities. Not necessarily that they are of the same language family. There is a process. There's a tedious, concentrated process of determining cognates, language families, rather than looking at a word on the surface and make the conclusion based on they look or sound the same.
Right.
And I'm saying that, and the way I made my tone is nothing like, it's not a confrontation, because even when we had that little back and forth on Sonata, right, I felt bad about it, because it came off as that I was going after you, and that wasn't my intent. I was more passionate about it because I had just come into this new revelation.
I get it. Yeah.
You know, but no, I had always, as you know, I've always admired you in your ability to study, and as a student as you are, you and I shared something which was ancient Mesopotamia. Right. Regardless of how we may arrive at different conclusions, that was something that I felt connected with you as far as that is concerned. Is that
Right.
I respect it because if we could build, maybe we can come together and have some agreements rather than a bunch of disagreements.
Right. Right. Right.
That's
I
how I
agree.
saw it. And
I agree.
I think this is the first time we actually really are dealing with that
Right.
directly.
Right.
Now, that's my thing on the surface. Now, from what I was able to do, was look at that because I got a whole bunch of PowerPoints that I know I don't even put out. I just do it because I study it and I don't want to lose it, and then I just type it
Right.
up and put it in. And if it ever comes up, boom, it's there. Or if I want to, like now, if I want to put it in book form, then that's something that is being in the work now. So on that topic, I would like to share my screen.
Yes. Yes.
That's cool.
Absolutely.
All right, Pat.
Absolutely.
Now, because we're engaging in this conversation, I mean, give me some feedback.
Okay.
Not a debate thing, but I want to get your
No,
perspective.
I'll give you honest feedback from
Got it.
based on what I've studied and my understanding, and I'll also try my best to represent what could be questions from the audience, either directly what they're saying or things that I'm surmising they might question you about.
Cool. That'll work.
All right.
Okay. Let me know if you see it. Oh,
Yes,
matter
it's
of
on the
fact, I got
stage.
All right. Okay, so this is a PowerPoint, and I think I did this show several years ago with Garfield. Um, Kish, Cushy, were they the same? Um, I think when we did right down to it, I came across something that the great Runoko Rashidi had brought up in one of his papers. He pointed out that the early predominance of the lower Mesopotamian city, the Sumerians called Kish, one of their most ancient, may be another bond between the Sumerians and the Nile Valley. The Sumerian Kush is apparently only a modification of the Nilotic Kush and thus reflect an unsevered connection between the two territories. Now, when I do this kind of research, I'm not necessarily attacking these people, but I need to get I want to get the pros and cons of falsification, etc. So when I did some research into it further, I came up with this. So here we have Kish, right? We have Kush, and then we have Kush too. They actually are like five, but these three were that when I first came across, and they were very significant in where I went further in how to unravel what we have as this little the puzzle. So first, we already can see that this cuneiform character here is very recognizable if you start studying up on Mesopotamian history. You'll always see this as Kish. You know who that was, but that's a toponym talking about that city state Kish. So here we have Kish and the Unicode, and it's the that was it for that one. It's referred to as totality. And in many attestations, nothing regarding this word can be linked to Kush of the Bible, nor Northeast Africa. You can also go to the openly richly annotated cuneiform corpus, and it gives you a long breakdown of it. Next, we have this word Kush. Now, with this character here is interesting. By now, it should be obvious that this is part of another PowerPoint, but the point was that if the Sumerians wanted to identify Kushites or people who were black, it would have been pretty clear, and they would have done it because they had words for everything just about at that period. So, for the record, a phrase that does mention black skin, ironically, are the words Kush Gigi. And I put this there, I was one of these shows and I was reading it and I made the person saying, yeah, you see Kush Gigi, that's all that. But the problem is that one, this is being a determinative and it's used to identify skin, leather, body, skin. And if you go back to how this word Kush and Gigi are together, you won't find it in the Sumerian text. You only find it in a Babylonian inscription. So Kush Gigi, meaning black leather, as opposed to Kush Su'a, you'll find for red leather, you'll find this in Babylonian writing, not Sumerian. So when you look at this word Kush and Kish, we have Kish, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with Kush, because there's a word in Sumerian. But before I go there, I'm going to show this. Yeah, this is from the digital corpus of cuneiform lexical text. In the text is it mentioning this because there's an inscription where I was to pull that out of. You'll find nothing making a reference to people in regards to tush as being a skin, or it's always identified with livestock in some sense. And if you go, you can go to this here, the digital corpus of cuneiform lexical text. You'll be able to pull up every usage of this, all the attestations for Kush you'll find. So in this case, I pulled this one up for leather. So you have Dura, Mashda, the determinative Kush, all of these, gazelle skin, skin of young gazelle, mountain goat skin, fallow deer skin, stag skin, bison, wool sheep, on and on and on, as you see. Skin, because the determinative that's used is Kush. When it gets down to black leather, red leather, leather quiver, sling, and on and on and on, you'll see how the determinative Kush is being used. As being a determinative, when you're reading it, is not spoken. So when you see it, or if you see it in the inscription, you'll know what is going to follow is some type of item associated with either livestock, some type of usage that has to deal with leather or skin. But we don't find it linked to human. And then finally, there's a verb, Kush, and that too, there's what is a scholarly convention where they identify, because there's another word that has Kush, obviously we just went through one. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Kush. None of them identifies with people. So according to the EPSD, it means to be tired, fatigued, exhausted. And in the most up-to-date Sumerian dictionary, Mark Cohen has it as Kush being a verb, to tire. The Lexing Kush to the verb, to be tired, to be fatigued, to be exhausted. The Akkad, the Chicago Syrian Dictionary, confirms it in the Akkadian parallels expressing fatigue and exhaustion. In an Akkadian bilingual context, he talks about how the weary man does not tire of admiration. So this one here is another Kush, but again, it doesn't link back to what we know today as the Kushites or people of Kush, or even what we find biblically as the land of Kush.
Land of Kush, or the people of Kush. All right, so let me throw this at you really quick.
Well, let me go ahead.
Let me just throw this at you. I'm gonna pause. Okay, you took it down. You could bring it back up.
I can pull it back up.
Yeah, you could bring it back up in a moment. I'll just hold it on the side and add it for when you need it. Just keep it up there. You don't have to take it down. That way, whenever you need it, you can pull it back up. So the thing that I want to ask you now is this. Obviously, the Bible speaks of a people group called Kush. That people group is identified as being, using the language of today, they're identified as being Nubian. The region that they live is a vast region. In ancient times, they're said to have spread into Mesopotamia based on biblical tradition and theology. And based on what we know in history, we find them in the Horn of East Africa. right? There's even historians that believe that the Kushites, according to the Greek historians, Herodotus speaks of and I'm paraphrasing, the wonderful vastness of the Kushite empire and peoples, how they seem to be everywhere in history. And what Herodotus is mentioning is that he's seeing pockets of a Kush civilization in parts of India, what they call the Indus Kush Valley. He's also seeing them in parts of what we today call the Middle East, but more specifically, Saudi Arabia. So it's interesting, and even Yemen. Now, Yemen is really easy to figure out if most people don't know, because you literally can throw a football from the furthest coastal region in Ethiopia, and it could quite possibly, if you're nice with it, land in Yemen. Yemen and Ethiopia are extremely close. You literally can get in a boat and be there in like, less than an hour. They're very, very close. So you can see the Yemen confluence there. But again, from an ancient perspective, Kushites do seem to be not just in continental Africa, but also making their way into Mesopotamia. Now, where I come in, Chuck, is where you come in. We both have a language skill set. My language skill set is Biblical Hebrew or Ancient Hebrew, and your language skill set is cuneiform. I believe you can take cuneiform and apply that to Sumerian, Assyrian, and Akkadian. I don't know what exactly are your skill sets in all three, but I do know that you read cuneiform. I do know that you're able to interpret Assyrian and Sumerian, and my assumption is also Akkadian. But the question I have for you comes from this statement. In Biblical Hebrew, Chuck, Kush does mean dark, and it also means black. And we speak of Sumerian as a language, Brother Chuck, as a language isolate. So how would you reconcile the notion that in Sumer, the term Kush is being used to describe black, dark, right? With skin to the side. Because even in Hebrew, Kush first just means dark or black. You can apply it to black skin, but it could be applied to black leather. It could be applied to black paint. It's just a word for black or dark, similar to what you're bringing out. So then my question for you is, let's just deal with the language for a moment. You're showing us that there's a difference lexically between what people are calling Kish and what people are calling Kush. And you've pointed out thus far that Kush does in fact mean black, not necessarily black skin, but certainly black. So where I'm meeting you in the conversation now is to point out to you that similarly, even in ancient biblical Hebrew and even in modern Hebrew, and I'll use it two ways. In biblical Hebrew, Kush means black. In modern Hebrew, Kush is black skin, and it's pejorative. It's the way that European Jews say Nigger. They call people a Kushi. Right? So my question for you now, there's a question in there somewhere. I know you were patiently waiting. Where's the question, Brother Zion? So the question I have for you is, what are your thoughts on the relatability of those two terms, how they both denote black in the face of even what you understand Sumerian language to be an isolate? I mean,
all right.
Is it fair to ask you then, if Sumerian isn't a language isolate, is it possible that a language isolate can still share certain lexical values with outside families? That's somewhere around the question I have for you. My apologies.
Okay, let's unpack the first part. All right, 2 points. One, Kush in Mesopotamia does not mean black.
Okay.
What I was showing you, or what I was pointing out, was you had a term that's found in one inscription, actually, and that was, hold on, here it is, Kush Gigi. The Sumerian word for black is gig.
Okay.
The word Kush here is a determinative identifying skin. What I was pointing out was that when you find these two together, the only time you find these two together is found in a Babylonian text.
Okay.
not a Sumerian.
Okay.
Throughout ancient Mesopotamian, particularly Sumer, and all the literature, the words that's used for black, dark, night is gig.
Okay. As in Sa, and we're going to get to that in a couple of moments, as in saģ-gi-ga, the term that the Sumerians are using at some points even to refer to themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. So, while we're there, I might as well ask you this too, right? So I'm just having fun because
I don't get to talk like this with those people.
I love the fact that, I finally have someone that is not just formidable to have the conversation, but in my opinion, authoritative enough to have the conversation. And when I say authoritative, I mean at least in terms of where I'm at versus where you're at. You're the authority on this topic, clearly. And so I'm going to lean on you. I'm going to lean on you to glean from you what is accurate, so that even as I forward progress in my journey, that I don't make the mistake that maybe I've been making. So I want to make this moment an opportunity to edify my arsenal before someone who I would consider a master. So I'm going to ask you now. Obviously, Brother Chuck, when we hear or when we read in literature saģ-gi-ga and we see that the English interpretation is black-headed, you and I know that people like York, Doc, he used that to establish the ethnicity of those peoples. And
well, I want to stop you with that part, because we're gonna have to pause here and there, because that's a term he never used. He never even knew about it. Because you got to understand, he didn't do the research. It was girls who were there who would go online and pick out different things that he could use, and he gave the okay once we were to read a proofread a publication. But that particular term, saģ-gi-ga, no, he had never even heard of.
Okay, this is definitely news to me. I didn't know. I didn't know, because I used to collect some of his works between 94 and I want to say 97, till one of my teachers was like, hey, stop all that. But I used to collect some of his works.
Wise man.
And wise man, I'm thankful. And but I don't want to act like I still wasn't intrigued. I want to give respect where respect.
Oh, same here. One thing I can say about him, I'm sorry.
No.
One thing I can say about York was at least he got a lot of us to read.
Oh yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. So, for me, this is news, and I'm enjoying it because, again, it brings edification. So I'll fall back from the York reference, but I'll still find a way to press with the general question, which is when we encounter in literature that the definition of saģ-gi-ga is the black-headed ones. Yeah, it does lead a lot of Afrocentric scholars, particularly, maybe even uniformly, to say that, see, these are the black people. But I want to admit to you, Chuck, that I wasn't of that opinion and view. I do believe that Sumerians were a people of color, but I also believe that Sumer wasn't a monolith. So we use the term America today and Americans. And in speaking of America and Americans, knowing what that looks like in 2026, you could be speaking about a number of people groups. I believe that Sumer, in some sense, has that similarity in that you got to be careful in describing Sumer as a monolith in terms of a people group, because I do think that there's enough evidence to attest to there being more than one people group in that region, although the Sumerians are the dominant ruling class. But I don't think that they're alone. And we see that in history that the Gutians are there at some point. We see other groups are there. We know Semites are there as well. So I think that the term Sumer becomes conflated when people are out of touch with it. But I still want to make this question, my apologies. The question is, when we see saģ-gi-ga and we see that it interprets as the black-headed ones, many scholars fall into the trap that are Afrocentric and say this means that they're black. I want to admit to you that even though I've had some errors in analyzing the data when it comes to Sumer and even Akkad, this particular conversation is not something that I fell into. I never used the saģ-gi-ga argument to denote that they must be a black people. I did use the argument to denote that there could be something there. But the problem I always wrestled with for myself was, well, if they're black, why are they just the black-headed ones? And then as I began to read literature, I encountered in Sumerian literature, of course, the English translation, because I don't read cuneiform, but in reading the literature, I encountered that at a certain junction, they actually used the term saģ-gi-gas to refer to all of humanity. So can you enlighten us on what the term saģ-gi-ga actually means, meaning based on the etymology, and also take us through the journey of how it's applied in history and if that changes? Because from what I've seen it being describing the actual people of Sumer, but then I've also seen it in the literature referring to all of humanity.
Exactly. And then that kind of throws away part of the argument.
Yeah, I have to admit that. Yeah,
but if you go back to it, see, this is what I uncovered, and I've dealt with enough Assyriologists to go back and forth, and they were like, wow, one of the things that we know is that before we even look at this word saģ-gi-ga, which is a later definition or a later expression, as you probably already know, the Sumerians, as we call them, refer to themselves as Namlulu.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that was a general term. Like many ancient cultures have a word that just denotes the people.
Yes.
Or folk.
Yes.
Or the population. We the people, like Aniwea, Cherokee. We the people.
Right. Right.
So the same thing applies here. So since you said let's walk through it, I want to do it and with your grace. I want to be able to explain this thing because I haven't really had a chance to express it like I want to.
Yes.
I'm getting it in a book where it's being read, but this is my thing here.
Yes.
I've been studying this thing for over 5 years now, on trying every aspect of it. So let me share this, and then we can I'm not going to go through the whole thing, and I can't because of the time, but we're going to go through just the main talking points.
Okay.
Cool.
By the way, family, if you guys are enjoying this, thumb up the video, share the live. We have a rare moment on Zion Lexx TV. We have good brother Chuck Morgan back at us again, and he is clarifying areas of Sumerian history, language, and culture that I think the Israelite community benefits greatly from, and I think that anyone listening to the general conversation also benefits. But I see where we benefit is in the area of how we may fall into the trap or maybe even habit of connecting various toponyms, place names, and regions because of the similarity in sound. If we're going to do scholarship, we must do what's called honest scholarship. And if we're doing honest scholarship, we're not just looking for things that agree with our argument. That's not how scholarship works. So one of the key reasons why I actually reached out to Chuck to interview him is because I actually wanted to have someone to talk to that could, in a sense, not only challenge my information so that I can grow, but I could use that moment to help grow our community. So this is a powerful moment. This is a beautiful moment. And let's not spoil it with any, argumentation that no matter what this guy says, we're still going to go with it. Give him an honest ear because maybe you learn something. I can tell you every time I talk to Chuck Morgan, I'm learning something new. When you guys hear me introduce him with accolades and respect, that's not a talking point. I genuinely respect him. I genuinely love what he presents, and I genuinely see value in him. And I think that if we all listen to him, we'll be able to see what I'm seeing and hearing as well.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Believe me, that goes a long way. That just motivates me to keep moving. All right. So, and here's my now, if you look at it real closely, I put this up here like this purposely because with all the different periods and iconography of how the Sumerians depicted themselves, this one here, which is a person, we'll touch on him in it shortly, but to be the blackhead is why I put this to look like that, because it's not saying you or anybody else, but how it was initially interpreted is something of an absurdity. So in my abstract, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just the key point was that the term appears predominantly in later Sumerian literature, or 3 period onward, and is tied to divine favor and anthropological concepts of humanity, paralleling the Akkadian Zamat Kakali as a figurative reference to humankind rather than phenotype. Earlier in a more common homonym, such as Namlulu, human, community, people, it lacks any chromatic component. Furthermore, the absence of color-based descriptors in administrative records where pragmatic physical identification was common, reinforces the non-racialized usage of black-headed, reinforcing the non-racialized usage of black-headed. I wrote that twice. I just noticed that. So what the presentation is going to center around, it's going to go right into that word itself, the morphology of it, the components, the contrast, and even the hypotheticals that I'm going to use to break the word down, just like this one, Namlugi, black people, or Namlu Babar, white people. Because I have had debates with white supremacists or who don't know they are, but that's what they push this whole thing that the Sumerians are white because they got blue eyes, blah, blah, blah. We go through the same thing. It's just depending on how they're using what's being interpreted. So saģ-gi-ga as an idiom for human beings is not a physical description of black-headed people. So in one inscription, the Lamed for Sumer and Urim, line 33, this is what Enlil, the shepherd of humanity, did. Saģ-gi-ga is a late linguistic innovation appearing around 2100 BCE. It was invented by the state literary elite to describe a relationship between the king, the gods, and humanity. It doesn't exist in the early dynastic periods. The gods, the kings treated them like beloved sheep, with the gods and the kings as their shepherd. Now, my dear brother, and I even confronted him with this before his passing. He never responded, but I think I got blocked after that. But I pointed this out where he made a point that the Sumerians called themselves the black-headed people, and they must have been only one of the many Nilotic Kushite communities established in early Asia. That was from the same publication I put up earlier. Well, I'm not even going to go through that right there. I'm going to get right there to the point. So past Assyriologists like Professor Emeritus Samuel Kramer, in his book, The Sumerians, Their History, Culture, and Character, you can go right through page 284 and through 85, and it talks about this. Now he pointed out how inhabiting the four corners of the earth were the Namlulu. This is a Sumerian compound word probably consisting of lu, man, reduplicated, and a particle, nam, used to form abstract nouns. It therefore corresponds in formation to the English mankind. The Sumerian people, the blackheads, as they call themselves, from at least 200 BC. 200 BC on, were only a part of this larger mankind, but needless to say, a very important part. In fact, they were so important that these blackheads were identified not only with humanity, but also with animals and plants. So if the word mankind referred to mankind as a whole, it goes to the whole thing with the flood myth. But what you want to take away from what Samuel Kramer, there's 2 points. One is this word blackhead or saģ-gi-ga comes after Namlulu. His analysis was clear that these people called blackheads were more than just people. And this is important because how they came about is important. And we're going to run through that real quick as well. Kramer observed that in mythological context, The black-headed ones appeared as humanity, not a phenotypic group. Saģ-gi-ga in early English translations, blackheads, was a name derived in part from Akkadian Zamak Kakali, meaning humanity, which would have been the Akkadian take on the name Nam Lulu. And as Professor Kramer indicated, Saģ-gi-ga was a name they would call themselves after the Akkadian and Gutian occupation. But the concept behind the name didn't change. Samuel Kramer understood blackhead as a cultural term for humans and not race. Because if he did, he would have said it. In fact, he does mention it from a Neo-Assyrian, Ashurbanipal, and I forget his son, where they, and this will take us into a whole nother conversation, but he literally makes the point to say that, I think he said the people of Malucha, we have Dilmun, let me see if I have it right. You have Dilmun, I can't remember the other one, and you have Malucha. And he mentions that according to what he read in the Assyrian script, the people of Malucha were black men. So if you want to say that, he would definitely made that point clear here, but he didn't. But we're going to walk through it further. So that was in the past. So today's Assyriologist, one being a professor of Near Eastern languages and civilization at Yale University, Dr. Frum, in this cuneiform commentaries project, demonstrates how ancient scribes had glosses that directly equates mankind, the people, and humanity all being together. You'll find this in two particular inscriptions. And the evidence that Saģ-gi-ga was well understood by the Mesopotamian scholars themselves. I'm talking about they had their own scholars. Not just, I'm talking about us today, but by the time the Sumerians were gone or their language ceased to be used, they already had schools that were going through this and then innovating it as well. So from the series of, which is the first millennium bilingual commentary, the Assyrian scribal tradition, it has that the Sumerian phrase Saģ-gi-ga is explicitly glossed, translated, by the ancient commentators themselves. And that you will find in an inscription called Udu-khul corpus, or Udu-khul, which is it's like a it's how to exorcise spirits, or what they call the house of the exorcist at Usher. So that is this is that particular inscription. And when you look at it, you're looking at what we call a bilingual inscription. So on the top you have one language, and then at the bottom you have another. And on the top we have Sumerian. At the bottom you'll have Akkadian, and then you'll have I think the Neo-Assyrian. So with the first two that we were dealing with is have the line one, which is Sumerian, and then line two you have the Akkadian, or the Akkadian equivalent. So you'll look at it, you'll see Nam Lu Ulu, and then you have Saģ-gi-ga K. Now K4 here is a in the grammar will let you know that it's speaking in the of sense. So you have mankind, Nam Lu Ulu, the people, and Saģ-gi-ga, of the Saģ-gi-ga. So all of these, if you were to translate it, this is something else totally different. But the phrase where you have here, like what I pointed out, you have the oppositional Nam Lu Ulu, Lu, mankind, is further specified by the conventional epithet Saģ-gi-ga. This is confirmed by its Akkadian klek, Saga, Samat Kakali, which denotes humanity or the populace. Not a racial, I have to keep pointing this not being a racial term, because I'm trying to reiterate that point that none of this stuff is connecting with anything racial or something ethnic, as some people wanted. Well, not changing, I'm just saying people have been using over the years. Now the suffix ga, or this goes into something else, but well, here it is. So saģ-gi-ga, because I use this on Sadetta show and something else. The conventional collective epithet applied to humanity. They're stacked noun phrases, not ethnic labels. So here you have K4 in the sentence. It marks the noun phrase as the grammatical subject agent. As an example, saģ-gi-ga ke a mu'undu, which means the people built the temple. K4 marks simply marks the as the doer, where mu'undu or do 3 is meaning to build. He built or they built. So the same construction is attested in early Sumerian inscriptions. So if you go to the inscription called Rulers of Lagash, that tablet, which has 3 specific expressions in Sumerian for humanity, and they being the same as what we have in the Neo-Assyrian, where it says Nam Lu'ulu, mankind, Numu, Nam Lu'ulu, the seed of mankind, and Saģ-gi-ga, humanity. And these or 3 Sumerian inscriptions use them interchangeably to describe human beings and not a racial group. So the Akkadian gloss in Uruk commentary supports it, where the scribe explicitly defines saģ-gi-ga as humanity or humans, people, the people. And together these texts prove that the term was universal and ideological, not referring to any particular type of group of people as a signifying this is one race, this is the Arab or the whites or what have you.
I agree. Great point.
Cool.
Great point.
So this is from you go to the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature. I just copied it from them, where you have after the flood had swept over and destroyed the lands, when mankind was made to endure and the seed of mankind was preserved, humanity was restored to its former vitality. What's important to know is they're using the same things here. And this is important because if we translate it, we look at it in the translations, we'll see how they're all identifying points or periods that, yes, there was a flood that wiped away mankind, but the seed of mankind was preserved. And then after that period, that seed flourished as humanity in the new phase of existence, or the way that the story has it, as the renovation period. So the Sumerian saģ-gi-ga did mean people.
So if I could just cut just for one moment, right?
Yeah.
Just to clarify also for the audience, something that I realized that Chuck is demonstrating here, that even I had to say, oh wow, I'm holding up. I'm gonna keep your presentation handy, Chuck. I'm just gonna pull it down for a moment, but just don't take it away. Oh, you took it away.
No problem.
Don't take it away, because all I have to do is just put it back up on the big screen. So if you get a chance, just throw it back up, and then when you need it, I'll put it back up. So I'm also reading Samuel Noah Kramer's book, right? And I'm a fancy of Kramer. When I talk about Sumer, I usually go to Kramer. And one thing you have pointed out, and I always wondered why, me not knowing you, I assume the worst, and I think that that's bad. And I want to admit to you that I'm having a real candid moment, and I'm enjoying the idea that I could say this publicly, just to show the realness of what I'm saying. When you challenged some of what I said, and you said, Brother Zion, I'm not saying Kramer's work doesn't have value, but there are areas of his work that have been updated since the publication of his works. And maybe, Brother Zion, I'm paraphrasing, you just haven't been exposed to the update. Kramer's work has value. We're not saying it doesn't have any value, but there are certainly things that he has published long ago that has been updated, right? So In reading his work on the page that you mentioned, which is page 286, this is where my enlightenment came from, right? He's quoting a Sumerian flood myth where he says on the top of page 286, after An, Enki, and Ninhursag had fashioned the black-headed people, vegetation luxuriated from the earth, animals four-legged of the plain were brought artfully into existence. So obviously they have their own creation story. They also have their own unique flood story. We're going to get into that next. But the thing that changed my mind was Kramer's mention here that all of humanity is considered the black-headed ones. So as you're demonstrating lexically, and Kramer points out in the literature, you cannot isolate the term black-headed to refer to any one racial group. And also, to be clear, Kramer also says, and he says this in on page 284 in the last paragraph, I'm going to quote, and this is for people who are saying Sumerians are white. Kramer says, there is at present, meaning by the time of the publication of his book, no evidence known to me that the Sumerians had any contact with or knowledge of people living in Northern Asia, China, or anywhere on the European continent. Kramer's writing this as a European, right? So he's also speaking to another distinct racial group in their attempt to racialize the term. So I want to admit to you, Brother Chuck, that when I mentioned to you that I had changed my mind in some sense on what black-headed means because I saw in the literature that it referred to all of humanity, I was actually referring to Kramer's writing here. I didn't read it in any separate independent work. I read it through Kramer's work right here.
You know what? We had, you and I, we were on what's the name? A Garfield show once, and we kind of touched on that.
Yes.
But we never really went further from there.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So so Kramer's work is still valid. The research the translation that he's done is phenomenal. But at the same time, there's so many other Assyriologists that have come, and certain aspects of his translations are kind of obsolete at this point.
I'm you know what? I'm not even remotely where you're at in terms of the study in that direction, but I'm going to say that even early on, when I engage various personalities in the conscious community on the topic of Kemet and Sumer, I would draw for the writings of Jeremy Black. And Jeremy Black is considered today, unless you tell me different, he's considered a more updated scholar on the topic versus Kramer. He's one of those people that are a little bit more updated in terms of the information and the data. What would you say about that?
I would say that Jeremy Black, he put a considerable amount of translations in the world in the various databases that we find, but even he is kind of has kind of taken a back seat of sorts because there's so many new, or not even new. Even in Samuel Kramer's time, you had Gelb, who kind of was a thorn in Samuel Kramer's side at times because he challenged Kramer on many of points that he made, and you almost to the point where it was a debate, and he pretty much refuted certain aspects of some of the things that Kramer had presented, because he was one of Kramer's peers, and they had a convention in Moscow. They had a symposium, and they were presenting certain new ideas on various aspects. This was more dealing with a Neo-Assyrian, and it was at that Moscow symposium where Kramer had pointed out how the people of Melucha, those three cities. One is Dilmun, which is that. Oh, and one is identified with Bahrain. I can't remember the name of it right now. And then Melucha, because these are the three places that were central in trade. Melucha is usually consistently today in the consistencies is identifying with the Indus Valley civilization.
Okay.
Dilmun.
A gentleman in the chat says Karen Radner is one of my favorite scholars. She translates from the tablets, one of the best to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot. Hey, listen, there's so many. But those who are like really making inroads are the ones that you'll find consistently being cited in their research. But everybody is depending on what area of expertise in translation or even the inscription, because we have some that are focused in early dynastic,
Yes.
proto-cuneiform. You have those who are focused on the Ur-3 period. So it all depends on the Assyriologists or Sumerologists that particular area that they're focused on, and how or what they've been able to uncover. Because at the time of Samuel Kramer, there have been thousands of other inscriptions that have been unearthed and translated and are sitting in databases now.
That's right. What people miss, and I'm going to make mention in this moment. Correct me if I'm wrong, please, Brother Chuck. What people miss is what Champollion is to the decoding and revealing resurgence of understanding Medu Neter through deciphering in terms of being the person that brings it to modern decipherment. What Francois Champollion is to the Medu Neter, I'm of the study and opinion that Henry Rawlinson is to the decipherment of cuneiform. Would that be an accurate comparison? Is Henry Rawlinson the one who helped to spearhead the translation?
No, I think that there were several individuals that were part of that. Rawlinson, his specialty was Persian.
Okay,
Farsi. That was his focus. It was oh man, what's his name? God, I can't remember his name right now. The person actually did the translations, because what they did was they put them all after they were completed their works. They separated each one of them and then had them to translate a particular inscription, and each one had a similar understanding or translation. Can't remember his name. I know you had. Give me a second.
Take your time. Take your time. Take your time. This is an incredible dialogue. We're going to take a quick commercial break, everyone, as Chuck does that. I also want to remind everyone or mention to you guys that I actually plan to have Chuck on for a lot of different topics. One of the topics that I have in mind is to have Chuck on to talk about the Sumerian Renaissance period. If you're familiar with Sumerian history, that is a very important time in Sumerian history, their Renaissance period, that's happening about circa 2000 BC, and that is so important, that time. I actually want to have you on, Chuck, just to talk about the Sumerian Renaissance period, which I believe is Ur-3, the third dynasty of Ur. Am I correct?
Yes.
And
it was that period that, remember, after they got rid of the Gutians, that was that final stage, because the Gutians had took dominance over the Akkadian rule in Mesopotamia. So when they got rid of, I think it was Utu-Hegal that started that, and then once they were pretty much moved back up into the Zagros, that was when they started this renovation or Renaissance period. But down in Lagash, they were pretty much immune to that conflict, especially under Gudea. So many of the inscriptions that we're finding now, when you see they had that familiar type, just like what I have behind me, comes during that period. That's when all these new stories and bits and pieces, loan words from Akkadian and so on, became a necessity to bring back the Sumerian culture itself. So you go to Ornamu. Their names are skipping my head right now.
I know Ur-Nammu is about 2100 BCE. I know he has a law code that precedes Hammurabi, 2100 BCE. Yeah,
Ur-Nammu. And also Lugal-Zaghazi.
Right.
But go ahead.
You said say the name again?
Lugal-Zaghazi.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with Segazi.
There's enough. Yeah, he's accredited for having a law code as well. but it wasn't
prior to Ur-Nammu.
You know what? I'm getting it mixed up. No, he was my bad. He was more associated with unifying the city states.
Okay.
Prior to Sargon. My fault. My bad. But
this is a very important conversation segue in a sense, because if we're talking about legal codes, right? There are some people that are of the opinion that, you know, everything comes from Egypt. The color red, soap, eye paint, everything is Egypt, right? This, you know, those are what some people call the maximalists. In scholarship, you always have three personalities. You have the person that's in the middle, that's the moderate, and that person's probably the most trusted because they don't have a horse in the race. Then you have the minimalist that's always trying to, you know, take away from something. Then you have the maximalist, oh, everything is this, right? So you have a lot of people that are like that with Sumer. You have people that are like that with Kemet. You have people like that with the Bible. But in this moment, I think we're having a very transparent and very objective conversation that's not on either side of the extreme. It seems that we just want the truth. So I know that a lot of people in the conscious community make the statement that the oldest legal code in the world is Ma'at, and you know, all legal codes in the world are based on that. They even say the 10 Commandments are based on that. But when I look at the 10 Commandments, I see more of a relationship with the Stella, the Code of Hammurabi. In Hebrew, we speak of ayin tachat ayin, which is eye for an eye. That's literally on the Hammurabi or Hammurabi Stela. I know that there's a legal code that precedes him, which is Ur-Nammu, and you find a similar rendition of an eye for an eye. Now, of course, it's more literal in Mesopotamia than it is in the Bible, but nonetheless, that language is there. And so the question that I ask for you in this moment, Brother Chuck, is apart from Ur-Nammu, are you aware of any Mesopotamian legal code that is older than that of Ur-Nammu?
Well, off the top of my head right now, I can't think of it.
Okay.
I can't think of it right now.
Okay, what about this? What about, I think you are familiar with this. So there's in Egypt around 2300 BC, you have what's called the Maxims of Ptah-hotep. It's a letter from a king to his son, giving his son moral and ethical instructions on how to conduct himself in life. And, you know, people who love Kemet and people who love the teachings and doctrine of ancient Egypt, they say, well, this is even the basis of what we're calling Ma'at. The Maxims of Ptah-hotep are the oldest record of a legal code. But I'm familiar with something in Mesopotamia that's called the Instructions of Shurupak, right? Are you aware of the Instructions of Shurupak at all?
I've gone through it, but I didn't put any real emphasis on it.
But you have you heard
not in comparison to.
Not in comparison, but I'm just the general idea of let me generalize it a little bit more. Then, not so much in comparison to the Maxims of Ptah-hotep, getting into the content, but are you at least familiar with what's called the Instructions of Shurupak?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So when I have you on, and I plan to have you on a lot because like you're so valuable, Chuck, in the community. It's not even funny, good brother. And I don't say this to brown nose you. I say this because it's the truth. You have value to all communities because very few of us are doing this scholarship, which is what you're doing. You automatically become the most valuable one because of that. But then I also want to add that you're not simply valuable because you're the only one doing it, but it's the passion, the drive, and the skill set and the honesty that you bring to it. Because notwithstanding anything I've publicly disagreed with you on, as I said to you privately, I'll now say it to you publicly, that never meant that I couldn't see wisdom in your delivery. That didn't mean that I couldn't see sincerity and honesty in your delivery. I acknowledge all of those things. I just disagreed. And if I'm honest with myself, I think at times when I disagreed from a space of not even having exposure to all of the available data. And I think that type of scholarship is bad. Because I even say to students in my class that when you disagree with something, disagree from a place of and know means that you're looking at the data, you're familiar with the data, you're exposed to a wide range of data. But to disagree with people, especially in an open scholarly setting, which I think is worse, and you know for a fact that you haven't combed through much of the scholarly data, that's problematic. So what I'm doing, Chuck, right now might be unique in the community. I'm inviting someone on not to agree with me. I'm inviting someone on not because their views perfectly align with them, but I'm inviting you on so that you can edify things that I have formally held on to publicly. You can edify me on publicly, which means correct it, not just so that I can forward grow in my journey, but so that everyone hearing what you have to say can forward grow. Chuck, this is so valuable, brother. Where do we have that kind of honest scholarship? Everybody's caught up on ego. Chuck, as you're speaking, brother, I got my pen and my pad out. You know, to keep it real with you, because I'm that person. If there's anything about me that has always allowed me to grow over the years, I'm able to humble myself and listen, because I realize that I'm not always right, and I realize that I can get things wrong. So anytime I'm in a conversation with someone that I see has a stronger grip on the data that we're talking about, I do this. I get my pen, I get my pad out. I become a student.
Hey, I appreciate that. And this is the beauty of it. And this is what I always wanted to at least have this kind of conversation with you because of your enthusiasm with Mesopotamia. And I never wanted to battle you. You know, I don't like debating. I've debated for years, hardcore, street debates, formal debates, but I never liked doing that with people that I admired or respected. And that puts me usually in a difficult position because I can unleash harshly on people.
Right.
But if I respect them, I don't want to do that because I want to find a common ground as opposed to, going knuckle to knuckle.
I can relate.
That's how I am. I've always been like that. Even dudes in the street, it was just like that. The people I respected, it's like I try to keep it peaceful or neutral. And, in conflict, we try to work things out because I just don't like debating people that I respect. It's just me.
I'm going to agree with you on that. I feel the exact same way. When I always found it harder to debate people I genuinely admire for one reason or another. I also find it hard to be at odds publicly or privately with people I see value in. But it's moments like this that dialogues like this are imperative and are necessary, because even though we can at some point encroach where we disagree, so what? Because the disagreement brought clarity. So what? Because the disagreement brought enlightenment. And in this moment, that's me. I'm being enlightened. I'm being edified. And in that setting, what's wrong about that? Again, Chuck, if I was to ever change or modify the title of this, I would include a lesson in humility in parentheses, because I'm of the belief that without humility, you don't grow at all, much less learning. You don't grow at all without humility. Humility says, what if? Humility forces us to say, I could be wrong. Humility is the precursor towards true and genuine growth, because humility forces accountability out of people. It compels us to be accountable for what we know, what we do, what we believe. And if you're accountable for all of the above, then you're on the right track and journey towards proper and long-standing evolution of character.
I agree 100%. And that's what has helped me through trial and error to grow. I mean, I've held certain positions and then I've had to modify it because I've learned more, or I've learned more from other people, and that's my thing. I'm here to learn as well, but I share what I've been able to uncover or research, or show you what the experts who are in the field have presented as well. That's been tried and tested among their peers. And that data is being presented to the public where they can look at it and then derive what they will from it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I definitely want to do that again, because there's that topic about the third Renaissance period is something that has to be addressed and clarified and cleared up, because there's some things that's been said that does not reflect the evidence and the facts in history.
Okay. And I look forward to that. Would you have 10 more minutes?
Yeah. I got about another 20 minutes.
Okay. So let's close out with the ending of tonight's title. We were supposed to go into Sumer, Kish, Kush, and then ancient Mesopotamian flood and creation stories. So let's deal with that. On the topic of the biblical narrative of creation and the biblical flood story, and then the fact of history that, hold on, there's an older narrative of creation, eerily similar to that which is later told in the Bible. Same thing as it pertains to the biblical flood story. There's an older flood story, eerily similar to that which is later told in the Bible. Now, a reoccurring theme tonight for me in New York, this afternoon for you in Hawaii, is that people do lookership. It looks the same, it must be the same. People do hearership. It sounds the same, it must be the same. And in all cases, that's just bad scholarship. So weigh in, Chuck, on this question. How scholarly founded or unfounded is it to simply look at the date of the Mesopotamian flood and creation story and the date of the biblical flood story and creation story, and how their content is eerily similar, and then say that means the biblical writers plagiarized and took this from Mesopotamia? How scholarly founded or unfounded would you say that is, and why?
I don't think that plagiarism will be the accurate term, as far as I'm concerned. I think that the parallels are indisputable. You have flood narratives, primeval history, creation motifs, divine counsel language, all have, you'll find that in the biblical as well as in Mesopotamian literature. The mainstream scholarship, it's not that controversial, because there's a relationship between the transmission of cultural diffusions, and I wouldn't link it as being plagiarism, because then it would be that they're maliciously taking something and not giving credit to the source directly. I don't look at it in that same sense. I think that certain people came in contact with various writings, and they liked what they heard, and then they continued it and may have innovated it a little bit. So what they may have brought into it may be something slightly different, but yeah, the root of it may have stemmed from something that they heard or read in a Mesopotamian epic. If I put that together right.
Okay. In retorting somewhat to that point you're making, let me add this anomaly. So biblical doctrine, theology, and thought posits that the biblical patriarch from whence the Bible's tradition and story emerged from is a personage by the name of Abraham. Abraham, according to biblical tradition and theology, has his beginning in Mesopotamia, specifically the southern region of Mesopotamia, specifically what people are today calling Sumer. Of course, if we talk about chronology and when Abraham is around, that could add to, confusion. Abraham is 2000 BC by biblical chronology, and that would roughly be the Sumerian Renaissance period by historical chronology. So the thinking then would be Abraham lives in this region at a time where, he absorbs his environment, his cultural milieu, he's exposed to what is taught. But if his ancestry is in this region, Chuck, right? Because the first thing that a scholar does in looking at data is not to make assumptions in either direction. It's to look at the data and base your interpretation on what the data says. In other words, it's not a scholar's first take to assume malice, to assume crime, like the idea of plagiarism. So, what would you say about the idea that what is reported in the Bible stems from what is called in history cultural memory? That there's a shared origin impossible, but impossible, not impossible, that possibly existing between those that are telling the creation slash flood narratives in Mesopotamia and then the people from which Abraham comes from. Because in light of biblical tradition, the Bible posits that Abraham has his origin in this region, which would mean not only him, but his descendants, his progenitors have their origin in this region. So although there are earlier written attestations to what is found later in the Bible, that shouldn't automatically mean that the biblical writers plagiarized it. Maybe it is that the story is first written and told by those who are framing it in Mesopotamia, whereas in the Bible, it is recorded later, but it's recorded later as a cultural memory. What's your thoughts on that way of looking at the data?
Well, yeah, I think that's basically what I was kind of saying. Maybe I didn't put it in right words, but it was certainly because you have various flood narratives in Mesopotamia, and based on chronology, obviously one is older than the other when it comes to that and biblical.
Yes.
Scholastically speaking, they would attribute the writers of the biblical teachings, or if you were to go just say Torah, if you want to deal with the story of the flood, it would have to have be a cultural memory. I would be more in line to agree with that, because whatever they did obtain, it was well known by the time the Akkadians were in rule, and that being a Semitic language, they would already have access to it, at least those who were familiar with that language itself, because those flood narratives were known in Akkadian literature as well.
Yeah.
How it was taken and then used is not like they maliciously did it, but because these are stories, these are epics. These are like when people tell stories back in the old days, they have stories that may have bits and pieces of truth,
right,
but because they're considered epics, because these are grand stories, they're amazing. These are stories that will be passed on from generation to generation.
That's right.
You see?
That's right.
And for others that may have been privy to it, read it, heard it, and then elaborated on it within their cultures.
That's right.
That's how these things spread. People that may have dealt with trade. Have you heard the story about? And they take it and internalize it. And as generations pass, they may have added more to it.
That's right. That's right. You know, in my opinion, from assessing some of what I observe in Sumerian literature, even as it pertains to the use of language, a ruler in Sumerian language can be referred to as Lugal, like a chief, right? And Lugal, if I'm understanding that part of the definition accurately, that simply translates as big man. You know, even here in our contemporary era in urban society, the dude that run the block, that's the big homie. That's the big man. We use that term colloquially today, not to suggest that because it exists in Sumer, Lugal as a ruler, someone holding power, and us later using it in the 21st century means that that's, you know, a connection ethnically. I'm not saying that, but I am pointing out the interesting development of how so many thousands of years removed, we're still speaking like this. The big homie on the block is the dude that roll the block, that run the block.
Yeah.
And so, they're using that term.
Like Lu, so you have Lu or Lu2, right, which is the general term for, well, the most attested word for man There are two. There is Lu and Kalab
Yes.
or Kala. There are two. Those two are the most attested by hundreds of times in Sumerian literature. And of course, Gal is a word that they use for great, grand, big. So yeah, you put the two together.
I would add for you that notwithstanding the immiscibility of the D, even in Hebrew, gadal means big or great. That's literally how you're saying great in Hebrew, gadal.
Gadal, okay. Yeah. Gudal. Could you elaborate a little more on it?
So if you want to, in speaking biblical Hebrew, if you want to say great, you say gadol. Gadol. The root would be gadal. Right? That would be GDL if we're using English. And in Hebrew, that would be Gimel Dalet Lamed. So a big person or something that's huge or something that's great. In Hebrew, that's the word gadol, coming from the root gadal. So when you can, in Hebrew, you can speak of a person that has great stature in terms of character, and you say gadol. For instance, one of my epithets given to me by a chief rabbi in Israel, a black chief rabbi in Israel, his name is Chief Rabbi Mordecai. He calls me Rav Hagadol, right? Which means the great one, Hagadol, the great one. The definite article Ha in Hebrew means the, and then Gadol means great. So when I do a weekly Torah class from my YouTube on Tuesdays, I'm usually doing it with a black rabbi in Israel. He's a chief rabbi, and he has surnamed me Rav Zion. My name is Rav Zion, but he has added the surname Hagadol, the great, right? Because in Hebrew, Gadol again means great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So I just think that some of these things are interesting. Obviously, we're 2 hours and 7 minutes in, so I think that we could effectively stop here. I think that
I was just getting started.
no, I have the time. I have a little bit more time if you want to elaborate more.
I got to go in town, but I got about another 10 minutes before I roll out.
All right. Good. So continue.
Yeah. Wait, I wanted to get back to that PowerPoint. I just want to get down to a key point where we left off, because okay, I really want to. Well, I almost left the studio. Hold on. Let me. Check it out. Oh, there it is. Okay.
There we go. By the way, family, if you are enjoying this presentation, like, share, subscribe, donate to the platform. Our good brother Chuck, this is your second time here. The first time, I don't know if I want to say this publicly. I don't know how the brother feels about it, but I would simply say that brother Chuck is unlike any guest I've had in the particular respect. Most people usually come on Zion Lexx TV and have their hand out. They want to be paid this, that, and the third. And brother Chuck has come here, not asked for a dime. In fact, brother Chuck is a person that he would put money in your pocket before he asks you to put money in his pocket. I just want to state that for the record. My apologies if I'm being too personal.
No,
but I do want to say that if possible, brother Chuck, could you just share, if you can, could you share your pay information, how we can patron you via either Cash App or Zelle, or any kind of pay app that you're using, because I think that your time is valuable, and I want to show you the appreciation that we have for you.
Oh man, I use it for other things, but everybody want to help it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just nuwapianism.com. Wait a minute. What's my Cash App? I don't even know what the thing is. Hold on.
How do I spell it?
Hold on. I'll give it to you directly.
All right, take your time. While he's doing that, everyone, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back. Shalom, family. This is your brother Avdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lexx. Go to Amazon and purchase all of my books. Type in my author name, Avdiel Ben Levi, or you can also type in Zion Lexx, There you'll find some of my earliest books and my latest works. It was written and engraved, The DNA of Sound, The Star of David Controversy, Ancient Kemet on Trial, Patriarchs of the Covenant, Matriarchs of the Covenant, and my two foremost books that are critically acclaimed on Amazon, and even one has become a bestseller, and that's going to be the Messiah Codex Volume 1 and Messiah Codex Volume 2. So go to Amazon.com today, type in my name, Abdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lexx, and there you can purchase all of my books. Peace and shalom, family. All right, we back. So I there we go. Okay. I'm gonna copy and paste it. Thank you, good brother Chuck.
Cool.
I'll be among the first to
I appreciate that. I just feel kind of awkward because honestly, I do this from the heart.
I know.
Everybody I know, I got people to talk to. They say, "Oh, won't you ask me?" I never was into that. Look, I'm doing this because I want to share this with people, and hopefully, they can grow from it. Because it's just something that I like to do, and I enjoy it. And if any kind of compensation, that's cool. But I mean, I don't go looking for it. I just, I have it because me and my girl, we do different things, and with a little business. But yeah, I have it, and I have it because I deal with that the watching stuff on my other channel. But that's the Cash App, and I appreciate I appreciate it. Anything. It's all
you are greatly appreciated, brother. My dad would always say to me that the people that are usually cut out for the job never really petition for the job. The saviors of the world, the supermen of the world, they never signed up for the job. So even in Hollywood movies, some of the greatest superhero characters, when you look at their backstory as the movie relates, they never signed up for the job. The person that comes to mind for a lot of us when we say Superman is obviously Superman. Clark Kent never wanted a job. Clark Kent never wanted a job at all. By the way, that's usually how you know who is fit for the job, because when people want the job, they always want it for all the wrong reasons. So on that note, I say, brother Chuck, you especially deserve it because you didn't come for it, nor did you ask for it. But just to show you how much we value you, I think that you should be patient in that way.
I appreciate that, brother. I really do. I mean, this has been a special thing for me. I pop in and out of different channels and shows, talking about this, or if it's on that and watching stuff. But this has been an experience, and this is something that I've been wanting to do for years. Not just with you on the show, but even just a topic to be able to go through it. And this is definitely a highlight of my life, and I really appreciate it. I know people are like, but I'm just saying this is how I feel, and I'm honest about how I feel. And when it's something that I love to do, I share it. What I do for a living, I enjoy doing. So when I go to work, you couldn't pay me to do what I do, and that's why I do it so effectively.
That's right. I'm going to keep his information up, guys. If you appreciate and value, as I do, what he has shared, not just for tonight's presentation, but even his previous presentation, then reach out, guys, and show him some love. Even if you don't have it today, those of you who go back and watch the video later on in the week, show the brother some love, because as a presenter, as a person that studies data behind the scenes, I could tell you guys that there's a lot of work that goes into it, and we don't do this for those reasons, but I could tell you there's a lot of work that goes into it, and you showing your appreciation in one way or another always helps to fuel a person's work. And if there's any work that should be fueled, it's work of this kind, work of this nature. So again, everyone, at Zion Lexx TV, show this brother, our good brother Chuck, some love. There you go, Chuck. It's on you.
Okay, so like with this, this is kind of touching back on what I was mentioning earlier. Where if they wanted to talk about specifically black-skinned people, they would have clearly made that known. So in this Assyrian inscription, and you can pull it up. It's available online. Where you had the Assyrians describing black people as having black skin like asphalt. This is a direct reference to Kushites, and specifically under Taharka, his wives, his sons, daughters, and that whole family as they were taken as captives, and you'll find that in the fragmentary cuneiform tablet K8692, when it talks about his wives, his sons, and his daughters, whose bodies was black skin like asphalt. I stopped it at that point at 23 because that point was rock solid, and I just want to share it. But you can pull it up at Taharka, King of Kush, and the Assyrians by Daniel Kahn, and you'll find it in W.G. Lambert's book Booty from Egypt. So that was that part. But I want to get right down to the nitty gritty of it. Let me see. These are just little pointers I was pointing out. For example, in the lexical inscription, talking about livestock and how they specifically identified the head being the first front. Just breaking down how the word like sang didn't necessarily mean head as a physical head, or it could also have been a person who's foremost, or who's in a first, or in a position of authority, like leader of a herd, firstborn of a herd, and let me see. I want to do that like black being the same thing. Yeah, same thing here. saģ-gi-ga is first found in literary inscriptions written during the reign of Lugal Zuin, the fourth king in the Earth 3 period. You won't find it prior to that. So when people say that they called themselves that was a name that they derived out of Akkadian. Because prior to that, of course, as Samuel Kramer pointed out, they referred to themselves as Namlu people, or the people. So let's look at how the term behaves grammatically. In Sumerian grammar, the meaning is not determined only by the root case endings, show role, function, relationship within a sentence. When we examine saģ-gi or any noun phrase, it is different case mark forms reveal how the scribe used it in context. To make this clear, the next set of examples are unattested morphological forms of saģ-gi-ga with their corresponding case endings, and none of these are found in any inscription. So these little hypotheticals, you have saģ-gi, where you have the absolutive, you have the saģ-gi-gi, the ergative, saģ-gi-ga-ak, the genitive, saģ-gi-she, determinative, saģ-gi-ra, dative, saģ-gi-da, commutative, and on and on and on. But these are different case endings that you would see in the inscription if you were making a reference to them in words like my black person, saģ-gi-gu, saģ-gi-ra, saģ-gi-da, saģ-gi-she, saģ-gi-a, saģ-gi-yin, right? To like saģ-gi-ga, saģ-gi-ra, to, from, or to or for the people, with the black people, towards the black people. I'm saying if this term was used to denote black people specifically in Sumerian literature, it would have said that, but it doesn't. So saģ-gi-ga, or blackhead, it just doesn't pan out in the grammar. Let me see.
Let me ask you this question. While it's important to make this distinction, something that even I had to understand that it clearly doesn't reference our black people. Let me ask you this question. What do you think is the reasoning behind this description? Why, in your opinion or research, are the Sumerians even calling themselves saģ-gi-gas? Right? What does the term describe or define?
Yeah, because that's just a general term that they use to represent the people. And in this special people is they having a unique relationship with the gods in a subservient role.
Right? And so in light of that, how does the term blackheads show any relationship in that experience of having a connection with the gods, right? How is labeling them the blackheads definitive descriptor or relative descriptor to describe that relationship, in your opinion? Because I'm just at this point, I'm also curious to, you see, it's one thing to point out the distinction that, hey, it does not refer ethnically to Black people, but then it also begs the question, what does it refer to?
Yeah, I'm gonna go right into that. I think I found what I was looking for. I was just going over on various ways that if it were making reference to, where is it at? If you were looking at ethnonyms, like, oh, if you like certain ways that we'll find, say we'll look at the men of the city of Ur. You don't find saģ-gi-ga used that way. If the men of Alam, you don't find it that way. Saģ-gi-ga, you don't find it, but you'll find these ethnonyms. It's like say Lu Uri Ki Mara. So the men of the city of Ur, together with the Sabirian men, Lu Sabir Ki Mida. The point I was making with this breakdown was how it appears in hundreds of case forms across all periods, proving the grammar fully supports ethnonyms when they function as ethnonyms. Saģ-gi-ga does not behave that way.
Okay.
But that's not. But that's still not. That's not the point I was making. But I'm going to go further into as to why it got to be that way. Where is that? Okay. So I'm trying to find something that I put together that goes directly to it. All right. So yeah, we've got the men, the Elamites. Okay. So here we go. So why would the Sumerian scribes use a word for color and attribute it to a people that were not Black people? The answer is simple, but it would require a little basic knowledge of Sumerian literature, culture, language in context. The following inscription is from the Sumerian text, Song of the Hoe, and it pretty much explains why. So instead of going through all the transliterations, if you start at 19 to 25, he placed the first model of humankind in the brick mold. His land began to break through the soil towards Enlil. He cast a true favorable gaze upon the black-headed people. Then the gods stepped forward towards him, and they bowed down at his feet. They claimed Enlil with prayer because they wanted and requested the humans from him. And to summarize, the gods are creating human beings. First, Enlil has the hoe enter the model of a human into a brick mold. So they're taking humans. This is a creation epic. The story of the hoe is a creation epic. It's short, but it's a creation story on how human beings were created, like in the ground or being made from the mud of the ground. Enlil has the hoe enter the model of the human into a brick mold made from the soil of earth. Like a toy maker pours material into a silicone mold to give it shape. Then Enlil places the clay into a form so it can become human. Then the land itself breaks open until Enlil, symbolizing that life is beginning to emerge from the soil. After this, Enlil is happy with the newly created humans, called saģ-gi-ga, translated as we see today as black-headed, and the first people made from the clay soil of the land, just of the ground, if you will. The other gods step forward, bow respectfully, and offer prayer to Enlil. They do this because they want Enlil to hand over these new human beings so humanity can begin its role in the world to praise and serve the Anuna. And this is Sumerian flood epic, the story of the flood. What is it called? Sumerian flood story. It didn't really have a title to it. The perishing of my mankind. For Nintut, I will stop and annihilate of my creatures, and I will return the people from their dwelling grounds. Let them build many cities so that I can refresh myself in their shade. Let them lay the bricks of many cities in pure places. Let them establish places of the divination in pure places. And when the fire quenching missing fragment is arranged, the divine rights and exalted powers are perfected, and the earth is irrigated. I will establish well-being there. After Enlil, Enki, and in her saga had fashioned the black-headed or humanity, they also made animals multiply everywhere and made herds of four-legged animals exist on the plains as is befitting. This is the flood tablet, deluge tablet, CBS 1060, 6, 7, and 3. After the gods restore human, this is also, this is a separate epic from the rulers of Lagash, but it taps into it. The gods restores humanity. The text states explicitly that Enlil, all of them fashioned the black-headed before populating the world with animals. The consistency of language across independent genres, cosmologic, myth, flood narrative shows that the saģ-gi-ga refers to humankind formed from the earth and not because of there being any kind of thing that's racial. So some people equated that as being that period or that place of the icky blackness, that darkness where they came out of the earth, but not literally black people. So together, if you read the Song of the Whole and the Sumerian Flood, demonstrating that humanity is created from soil placed into brick molds, animated by divine command, universally labeled saģ-gi-ga, which can be called people the gods made. In both narratives, the term appears after the gods form or restore all of humankind. This consistent cosmologic myth of flood tradition shows that the Sumerians understood saģ-gi-ga as a poetic collective for humanity itself, rooted in symbolism, clay earth, and divine craftsmanship. You'll find that partly in Enki and the world order. Together with Enlil, he secured the people's well-being into their charge. When their outward condition was ever-changing and their gaze unsettled, he washed it away. Then they rejoiced, for this was the strength of the land and the very life of the black-headed people or humanity. And Zina, the good bread of the whole world. This is, or in this, Enki firmly established its decree. If you want to get more on that, of course, you can go down to Enki and the world order, lines 330 through 334. And this goes into how they're described in a Akkadian writing or iconography. Like this captive is a Sumerian captive. And then, of course, Lugal-Zagazi, when he's about to get hit with a mace for trying to escape, that's depicted in the victory seal of Sargon. And you look at Eonatun's steel of the vultures and Sargon's victory seal, you see the similarities on how the standard is of how the Sumerians were depicted. And of course, this right here just illustrates how, as a part, what happens to captives was that they shaved off the hair around the side and left it on top. And you can see it almost like a filly, but not literally. But that was a form of humiliation. And this is something that the economy had done.
Ironically, Brother Chuck, you may not know this, or you may in fact know this, but this happens to David's soldiers in the Bible. David's soldiers are fought by enemy raiders in the land of Canaan, and the Bible says verbatim they shaved the sides of their heads to humiliate them.
I need that quote. I need to put that in here as well.
And
that's right on point.
David said they could not return to the fighting force and bring themselves back among the people until the sides of their heads had grown back.
Whoa.
Yep.
Yeah, I need to get that quote from you. Because you mentioned earlier about Jeremy Black. Jeremy Black and Andrew George, of course, Nick Post there, he's one of the leading Assyriologists today. In their concise dictionary of Akkadian, the evidence shows that Akkadian artists adopted and preserved an already established southern Mesopotamian visual canon, confirming that the figures on Sargon's victory stele represents the same local population depicted earlier in Sumerian artistry. The distinction facially modeling and hair morphology directly paralleling early dynastic Sumerian military imagery, particularly the standard of Ur and the stele of the vultures, confirming the South Mesopotamian provenance of the prisoners. And they pointed out how in Akkadian they have this word matuta gulupu, where one is gulupu, to shear, shave, and shar mutata, shave half head as a punishment, as a sign of slavery.
The quote is 2 Samuel 10:4.
I'm gonna note that.
Yeah.
What 2 Samuel's
chapter 10, verse 4.
Got that.
Yeah.
I need that. Yeah, that's right on. That's right in there. I needed that. Yeah. You know what? I read the Bible front and back. That's one that does not stick out. When I was doing this, I didn't even think about that. But now I got something to add to it, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So that's basically the point that I wanted to put out. How these blackheaded, if you will, in the translations that's not even used anymore, but the humanity, these people were created like little moles. Where you at? Oh, they are. They're like little moles that these special people were printed out, and all the other gods wanted one, so that they can be put in the world to revere the gods.
Okay.
You say, well, why did God create man? Well, he needs some people to worship him. That's basically what this was.
Okay, so let me close with this thought in the form of a question. So the last thing that I'll ask you is in your closing statement and your closing presentation. The blackheads are created from the soil, from the earth, and the term is designated of the descriptive of the created man, right, in his full glory. The question I would ask for you is going to be based on what I know people are thinking automatically, right? People are saying, oh, if he was formed from the earth, then it must be he's a black person or a person of color. You know that's what people are thinking. So let me say this to you. Regardless, or notwithstanding what anyone is thinking the Sumerian ethnicity is, here is one thing we know for sure. They have an ethnicity. Here is one thing we know for sure. They have a look. Their look, their ethnicity will be tied to one of many possible hues. In your scholarship, Chuck, to the best of your understanding or till date, what would you regard the hue or look of the original Sumerians or the Sumerians in general? And if that look could be applied to any modern group, what modern group fits the racial designation of what the Sumerians look like? I hope that's not too loaded or too extended.
No. If I were to go back and look at all of what we have in their iconography, it would be closely related to what we would consider Arabs today.
Okay. And you know what's funny? You know what's funny?
What's that?
Here's a moment. When I speak to people in my classes, I tell them that if you think that the biblical Israelites looked exactly like sub-Saharan Negroes, like we do, I said you would be quite mistaken. I said that I tell them that the earliest descriptions of us are eerily similar to the peoples in the regions of the Middle East, not just in terms of the hue, the color, but even in terms of the features. The description of Hebrews, like the actual depictions of them in history, We have them. We know what the Hebrews are depicted as in ancient history. Yes, they are a people of color, but being a people of color doesn't automatically mean that they are sub-Saharan Black Africans. There are a lot of people with color, right, that are not necessarily sub-Saharan Black Africans. So if I'm brutally honest, Chuck, I'm going to use the moment to say that this is one of those topics that is touchy, right? Because again, if you just want the truth, which is what scholarship is about, then you just have to go with where the truth takes you. And to be brutally honest, Chuck, in my research, I haven't seen that the biblical Israelites or the biblical Hebrews look in ancient times like sub-Saharan Africans or exactly as we do. But I also don't think that should mean that there's no relationship whatsoever, because if any one of us was to go deep into our remote, distant past to look at what would have been our original ancestors, I think a lot of us would be shocked at what they look like. Oh, that's wow, right? Some of us could go back 2-3 generations and be like, oh, I got Indian in my family, and be shocked at the relationship. So how much more if you're going back thousands or maybe tens of thousands of years by some calculations? So I say that to say, Chuck, I'm one of those Israelites, Chuck, that's rare because I'm going to be honest and brutally honest. And in being brutally honest, Chuck, I haven't seen a single ancient depiction of Israelites that look like sub-Saharan Africans. I can tell you that the depictions do show a people of color, but feature-wise, it's not sub-Saharan Africans.
It's deep, and that's being brutally honest, and you can never take that away from you, because it's not necessarily going to make you look any better or worse. All you're doing is basing it on here's what we know currently. Now, if somebody comes around later on, then they say, well, here we have this, then that may be the case. But as it stands now, I haven't seen it either myself.
Yeah. You know, Chuck, I've arrived, and I know I say I'm of age, and I know you be like, you don't got no age on you, but I'm arriving, Chuck, at this age, not just physically, but as in a state of thinking that I'm fully content, Chuck, with whatever the truth reveals. You know, I'm at a stage in my growth as a man, as a person, that I just want the truth. Yeah. And whatever the data unequivocally reveals that the truth is, I'm with that. I'm not going to wrestle or argue with the truth, because at the end of the day, Chuck, I'm not invested in any belief, be it religious, social, because I like it. I just want the truth. And I think if more of us had that sincerity and honest approach, we'd not only have better dialogues, but we'd have more honest dialogues.
It's so true. That is so true, man. You know, I'm just doing my part to try to share the evidence. And hey, if you can find more to either add to it or pull from it, by all means, I'm open. I'm wide open, because I want the truth myself. You know, if I knew that the Sumerians were Black folk like me, then I would be first in line.
Of course.
But from what I have been able to research in all the years on this one topic, it just doesn't pan out. And this is a quote from you that I use periodically, because it's so true and it's so relevant, especially right now. Well, you said, I think they know who they are. And I know we sound crazy telling them that there's something other than what they themselves depicted themselves as. We sound crazy.
Fact.
Hey, that quote I always use in when I'm on certain places. I mean, sometimes I attribute it to you, and sometimes I just put it up there and just have people think about that. And then I move on to different sections or passages I want to be going through.
That's right.
But that's powerful, man. When you said that, I saw you went on Kill Priest that time, man. I need to use that.
Yeah, listen, man. One thing I'm always going to do, good brother Chuck, is I'm always going to attempt to be in the ever-present update of information, because I realize that just as information can come out today to validate what we're saying, information can come out tomorrow to invalidate what we're saying. And if what we're holding is truth and it's truly true, right, and correct and sound, then that means there should never be you should never be in fear of constantly challenging information. And if you want to continue growing information, you have to do just that. Consistently challenge your information. If your information is true, it will endure the test of the challenge. If it is not true, it will not. But guess what? It still benefits you because now you know what is not true and you can forward progress towards that which is true. Again, Chuck, I just want the truth. And when you don't have a horse in the race and you just want the truth, you will find the truth.
Exactly.
It's been an honor, Chuck. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to have you back on and focus in different areas.
Yeah, we're gonna cover it. Because I'm kind of long-winded, so we need to get right into it, stay right on that point, and then move on. Because I can go all over because everything is relative in some way.
Oh yeah. Shout out to Mika. Shout out to Learning 2000. Learning 2000 been in the comment section all night. Co-signing much of what you say. I want to say 98% agreement, and not to say if he disagreed that's bad too, but and he also seems to be very knowledgeable on the topic because even before you answered to certain points, he answered, and his answer was exactly what you were going on to say. So whoever Learning 2000 is, I want to say thank you for your impetus in this conversation and at least in the chat. I'm in great appreciation of it. And again, to you, Chuck, the show is yours. You're the guest of honor. I'm going to throw it on you to close it in any which way you see fit. But I first want to say, as you exit, thank you, good brother. I look forward to many, many more dialogues with you. I think that this is a space that is conducive to learning because even when we disagree, and we will eventually disagree, as we are disagreeing, some people probably can't even tell that we disagree because of how maturely we handle the disagreement. Most people are used to when there's a disagreement, there's a shouting match. When there's a disagreement, we have to yell a slur. In this conversation, if you're really listening, we disagreed a couple of times, but we're so mature in the way in which we handle it that you probably can't even peep it. That's where we need to get to, though, Chuck.
Yes.
That's the level where we need to get to, because oftentimes ego is too much of a factor in the midst of where we disagree. Being wrong is never a failure. Being wrong and failure in general brings you a step closer to finding that which is true, to getting things right. I always give the example, Chuck, and I know I said I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to shut my big mouth in a couple of seconds, but I always give the example to my classes that you know how many jump shots Michael Jordan had to miss before he was the master at that? You know how many dunks he had to take? You know he probably played in the rain, the sleet, and the snow. In other words, greatness is not an overnight thing. Greatness is about consistency. It's about knowing how to handle failure, but it's more so about resilience, right? And so as a scholar, you want to be resilient. And your resiliency as a scholar, to me, is based on your ability to accept correction, to be open to edification, and to always be humble. Always be humble. With that thought, Chuck, it's on you.
All right, brother. Again, I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to share with the audience a little bit of knowledge that I have acquired over the years. It's been an absolute pleasure, man. This has been something that I've been waiting for the longest, and that's why I'm looking forward to coming back and we can go into some other areas and get right down to it and bring some clarity to it. And then hopefully people will take a time, analyze it, scrutinize it, criticize it, but do the research. The information is out there. I'm just trying to share with you where some of the places where you can find it. And with that, I got to really make a run. I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone for you just spending the time listening. And I just hope that you will, just check it, analyze it, look it up, because like I said, you'd be surprised at what you find. You might find even more, And if I don't deal with it now. If there's some questions that some people might put in the video up on YouTube, I'll be happy to pop in add to anything because I'm pretty good at that. I've been doing it long enough, and I like to share that as another outlet for people who may not want to engage directly.
Oh yes. So how do we find you on YouTube? Is it by your name, Chuck Morgan?
Oh yeah, you go to my YouTube channel on this one. Of course, the other one is dealing with the Nuwapian stuff. So that's Chuck Morgan. But my website is nuwapianism.com, and the reason, because of my studies, I kind of attack some of the literature that you all put out by showing the fallacies of it by going to various Sumerian inscriptions or Akkadian or Neo-Assyrian, showing that what they were saying over the years was just doesn't reflect what is mentioned in the inscriptions nor the grammar itself.
All right. I want to give the quote of Learning 2000. I'm assuming it's a male. I could be wrong. You could clarify in the comment section. My apologies if I'm getting it wrong. Learning 2000 said, Assyria and ancient Israel is something I studied in academia. I love the field of the ancient world. I did archaeology in Israel as well as with the then named Oriental Institute. I've actually been there, the Oriental Institute in Chicago. That's a beautiful place. It's not, when you think of the Oriental Institute in Chicago and you know what it offers, you think of it as this grand place. And then when you finally get there, you realize that it's on a college campus, but it's a very small like corridor. Learning 2000, I was there in like 2020 or 2019. It could be either 2020 or 2019. I was there Learning 2000, and I had to literally take a bus to get there. I got off the bus. This was straight from the airport. Got on a bus to get there from the airport. It dropped me off at the campus. Walked on the campus grounds. Finally found it to realize that it was like a small corridor of like a room. It's not like what people are thinking when you hear the Oriental Institute. It's not what you're thinking, but it's still invaluable in terms of the information in the archives. I mean, it's incredible archives that they have there. But yes, and he says, so yes, he says, I did archaeology in Israel as well as with the then named Oriental Institute, and he says, respect to Chuck.
Thank you so much for that, 2000. Appreciate it.
All right. So once again, all right, that's it. Thank you, brother Chuck.
Hit the road. We're gonna talk. I want to share. I'm gonna get some more information. I'm gonna share with you, and get a couple of things from you offline. We'll talk. I got to get ready to roll out now.
All right, good brother. Take care and have a great day.
Thanks so much, brother.
Anytime.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Anytime. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. This has been another Zion Lexx TV exclusive, powerful dialogue. One of those moments where we get to show that edification is always a good thing. It's never something that should be frowned upon or looked down upon. There were several views that I once held with regard to Sumer, and I credit Chuck as being one of the people to help me refine those views over the years. That doesn't mean that that every single thing I believe about Sumer that Chuck disagrees with that I was wrong about, but it certainly means for me that there was a number of things that, due to Chuck's influence and his great knowledge, that I've become updated and edified on. I can certainly say that. And then there were things I was just blatantly wrong about that he helped, to influence change within. And I'll say this. I could be wrong, but the tradition that I follow tells me that the people and persons that you assume to be adversarial, they usually are mirrors of something that you're fighting within you. This might be too deep for some, but I'm going to throw it out there in the ethos anyway. Right? My culture, my tradition that I follow teaches me that the adversaries that we encounter in life are but mirrors of something that we're fighting within ourselves. So what that ideally means is that every adversary in general that you face is usually a projection of something within you that you need to address and deal with. And so rather than viewing people in intellectual spaces as being adversarial in a negative way, see them as a potential highway and gateway towards your edification and growth. one of the greatest ironies of the universe is that which is responsible for bringing you to the next level is usually someone or something unfavorable. And the universe is testing in that moment your willingness to accept and even be merited for what is in store for you. So what does the universe do? It brings some of your greatest blessings in the form of what you think is your greatest adversary. The problem is we're projecting. That person is not really your adversary. That person's there to edify you and help you to grow. I hope that information helps somebody. I hope that you guys enjoyed what you heard today. I look forward to hearing from Brother Chuck several more times. And with that being said, I'm your brother Zion Lexx. Peace.
Shalom and welcome to Zion Lexx TV. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, and share the live stream. Become a member of Zion Lexx TV and unlock several hidden features and hidden videos. Also, you can donate to Zion Lexx TV at Cash App $Zion Lexx or via PayPal at zionlex@gmail.com. We also have an online academy entitled Learn Torah Hebrew Academy. Visit us on patreon.com/learntorah. Our gold tier membership gives you unlimited access to our special event lectures and our special live movie nights. Our platinum tier gives you unlimited access to our Torah class, Kabbalah class, Patriarchs and Matriarchs of the Covenant classes, as well as understanding the New Testament via the oral tradition class. Our diamond tier gives you unlimited access to all of the previous tiers, as well as our most sought-after class, our Biblical Hebrew course. And finally, our highest tier, our Sapphire tier, gives you unlimited access to all previous tiers, as well as our highly esteemed rabbinical course. Be sure to sign up today and check your tier membership so as to ensure you're getting access to the classes you desire. Thank you for visiting us here at Zion Lexx TV, and now back to our current live stream.
Shalom, shalom, family. This is your brother Avdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lexx. Go to Amazon and purchase all of my books. Type in my author name, Avdiel Ben Levi, or you can also type in Zion Lexx. There you'll find some of my earliest books and my latest works. It was written and engraved, The DNA of Sound, The Star of David Controversy, Ancient Kemet on Trial, Patriarchs of the Covenant, Matriarchs of the Covenant, and my two foremost books that are critically acclaimed on Amazon, and even one has become a bestseller, and that's going to be the Messiah Codex Volume 1 and Messiah Codex Volume 2. So go to Amazon.com today, type in my name, Avdiel Ben Levi, otherwise known as Zion Lexx, and there you can purchase all of my books. Peace and shalom, family.
Tearing down idols and we cutting down poles. We calling back Israel to the hell we know. Throwing out crystals, we don't need these stones. And we ain't no God, that's a job for y'all. All praise to the Most High. All praise to the Most High, Yahuwah. All praise to the Most High. All praise to the Yah Israel. Tearing down idols, and we cutting down poles. We calling back Israel to the hell we know.
flowers, and we cutting down poles. We calling back Israel to the L we know. We throwing out crystals. We don't need these stones, and we ain't no gods. That's a job for y'all. Everybody help me say all praise. All praise to the Most. I can't hear you say. All praise to the Most. Oh, all praise to the Most. Hey, all praise.